Hello everyone. Welcome. I see we have some people joining from the waiting room. Thank you everyone for being here today. We're very glad to have you joining our iRestore closing conference today. So we're very happy to close this project with this nice conference that we have very interesting contributions from our Child Advisory Board members, from the experts that supported us throughout the project. So thank you everyone for being here today. I'll just do a quick welcome and housekeeping rules before I give the floor to my colleague Mariama Diallo. So we have today this meeting taking place, this event taking place in English, and you have also the option to choose other 3 languages to hear this event. We have simultaneous interpretation in Albanian, in Greek, and in Romanian. So if you wish to hear this conference on one of these 3 languages, you can click on that globe sign that you have on the bottom of your screen, that is the interpretation button, and choose the language that you prefer to hear this conference on. You can choose between English, Albanian, Greek, and Romanian. I will do a proper welcome on the project and on everything that will happen today after Mariama Diallo, our Access to Justice Regional Program Manager of Terre welcomes you on behalf of Terre. So thank you everyone for being here today once again. And please, Mariama, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marcos, and welcome everyone on behalf of TDH. I'm actually particularly pleased to be with you today because this project is a bit of a special project for us and for me personally. So I'm very happy that today we have the children, we have young people with us, we have the iRestore partners and colleagues, which is really what we call the iRestore family. We have the advisory board members that are part of the iRestore family that was so important to us. And now I see quite a high number of audience from various countries in Europe, and it's very inspiring to see that. And I'm looking forward for the discussions. iRestore is very special to me because this was basically my first experience with Terre. When I joined Terre, I joined with actually helping in writing this idea with iRestore. This was for me also a beautiful encounter, and a beautiful encounter with the European Forum on Restorative Justice, with Restorative Justice Netherlands, and getting even closer to the colleagues in TDH, Romania, Greece, and Albania. And this has actually been a very beautiful journey of over 2 years. And trying to really make things work and discuss quite technical aspects sometimes around restorative justice and child victims. So this was done thanks to the funding of the European Commission. We received that in 2019, so the project would start in September 2019, and we still at that time had the chance to meet face to face. So this was actually a very special event, and it's almost an historical event that we could meet face to face nowadays. I think for me, what I associate iRestore with is it's an adventure. It's discussing about a challenging topic. We discussed with the editors, the executive director of the forum, about continuing a project on child victims and restorative justice. And everyone was saying to us, but child victims is going to be difficult because how do you access this target group? And then, restorative justice, it's true, we don't have so much data, so maybe more or less try. So we try to put together this idea and make sense out of it. And obviously, the idea seduced our funding body, so we were very happy. It was adventurous in a way, even though as TDH we find it was necessary. It was because we were working directly with children. We wanted children to have a meaningful role to play. We wanted to have children's views being heard. And so we wanted to work with what we call child advisory boards. And we are so pleased today to have some of their representatives with us. And you will hear a bit more about the work that they have done. we wanted to help to explain further what restorative justice is, because at that time, and we hope that 2 years and 3 months later, we have a little bit more information about actual cases that involve child victims, what are the challenges with these cases, to actually have a stronger understanding of the concept of restorative justice, and also to better understand at which stage of development each of the countries that are part of this project, that means Albania, Greece, Romania in particular, are in terms of applying or implementing restorative justice. And we wanted to actually really create a space for practitioners to exchange, to discuss, to learn about that particular topic, restorative justice applied with children themselves. Of course, as I said, we were very lucky because in September 2019, we met face-to-face, and a few months later, COVID happens, the pandemic happens, we were all in lockdown. And so we had to continue running a project in very uncertain times and a very particular setting, which most of the activities that we have around research, around advocacy, the work with the children and the Child Advisory Board need to actually shift online. And we were not sure if this was actually going to be possible. But what was so amazing is that every single person in this project, and I really want to thank all the colleagues in the field, make it actually happen. And the children themselves show so much flexibility to be able to appear in an online environment. And it actually became quite powerful online events, even though this, of course, would never replace what you can actually have when you have a meeting face-to-face and the interaction that you have from person to person. So iRestore is also about an impact. For us, iRestore is not just a project, a 2 years project that got funded where we have ticked the boxes, because at the end, why are we doing what we are doing? Why are we actually working, and why did we want to develop this idea? First of all, we wanted to really propose something where children could feel a bit empowered, a bit more empowered, to actually have them going through a meaningful journey, to have them have an experience about being part of different settings where you will have the professionals discussing and where they would actually be part of this discussion and the brainstorming of some ideas. We wanted to actually discuss with children and young people to make them understand that their voice actually really matters to us. We wanted to actually promote a restorative attitude. Here, our colleagues from the European Forum and Restorative Justice Netherlands taught us a lot about what this actually means. What do we mean by restorative approaches, restorative attitudes? What is restorative justice? And we discussed with so many professionals, practitioners, the policymakers, academics, and we saw in some of the events that we had a high level of participation where people were so keen to actually explain, better understand, but also share their experience on restorative justice, and so how they actually were seeing this, what we call now at this moment, restorative attitudes. So we wanted also to have some concrete results. We do this because we want concrete results. We don't want to just tick a box. As I said, we want this result for the children. But as we know, since the professionals and the adults are involved, we want them to be involved in a meaningful way and understand what we call child-friendly justice, child-friendly communication. How do you address this interaction with children? How can you actually really understand the needs of children when they are involved in criminal proceedings? So as we are doing this, we also regularly consult with a wider group of children. And to give you an example, in 2020, so last year, when the European Commission launched its strategy on the rights of the child, we got together with 12 organizations to actually prepare what we call a policy brief that is called Just with Children. And that document, we did it together also with 40 children from different countries in Europe. And we actually asked them a few questions, including, what is child-friendly justice to you? And they give us so many insights, so many various information about the importance for them to actually work with professionals that have the competences to understand what they want to say, to understand what they need. That actually they were using words that were about caring, about feeling acknowledged, about feeling heard. They wanted safe environments because they shared so many stories of unsafe they actually had felt in criminal proceedings. And they wanted, most of all, access to information. They wanted to be explained what was happening to them. This was actually essential for them. And we really tried, and we do that also in many other projects that we have at Terre and in partnership with our European partners. We try to address all these questions and to really see that what is actually asked of these children, we feel actually accountable, we feel responsible to actually try to create the platform and the spaces to be able to provide it. So as one of the Greek Child Advisory Board members or Greek children that was involved in this consultation for the policy brief to influence the EC strategy on the rights of the child, for them, child-friendly justice was necessary. So it is necessary to the welfare of society. So we are basically trying to listen to this. We hope we do a not too bad job. And we are trying now also to continue with our ideas. And we will be hoping that our proposal that we submitted for a continuation of some of these ideas and the big learnings that we had during iRestore phase 1 will be heard. And we will be able to continue this journey together with new partners also in Estonia and in the Netherlands, because we were now talking with practitioners, policymakers, with children, but there are other important people in the picture of restorative justice. We need to think of that enlarged group of key people that actually have an important place to make the process actually a successful process. Those are the parents, the community members, some policymakers that need to be convinced that you need to actually provide proper budgets for restorative justice. You cannot just expect mediators to be doing their work for free or unless you need to provide some public funding. So we hope that we will be able to work further on this and to further promote the exchanges between the European countries, because we see that there's so many various practices that there is really a space to learn and to exchange. So I want to wish you a very, very interesting, exciting event today. I'm particularly really looking forward to it. So I give the floor back to you, Marcos, and really a big warm welcome and thank you to our partners and the European Commission. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mariam, for your words. Thank you for this introduction. Continuing with our event today, I will quickly present the agenda for what we have ahead of us during this afternoon, and then I will present, with the help of our Child Advisory Board members, the project's results. What have we achieved since September 2019 until now? So as for today, after I present this presentation of the agenda and the project results, we'll have a keynote speech on restorative justice with the great collaboration of Tailor and Annemieke Wouters. Following that, we'll have the presentation. Thank you, Tailor. I see that you joined us. Welcome. Following that, we'll have a presentation of the child-led awareness-raising materials that were produced by our Child Advisory Board members. Then we'll have a discussion about that. And we will also have a discussion with you from the audience with the contribution of our Restorative Justice Advisory Group members. And we'll close everything with another message from our Child Advisory Boards by the end of this conference. So I know that I'm recognizing a lot of names here in the audience. So I know that many of you have been with us in other events, have attended the trainings that we had in iRestore. So welcome to all of you. And but I will also quickly present the project for those who haven't heard about iRestore before. And before I do that, I'd like to highlight another very nice presence that we have here with us today. That is Maria Fouquier from Visuality, that is doing a live drawing of our conference. I will highlight her, spotlight her for you to see what I'm talking about. So Maria is doing a live drawing of our event. So you can see that her name on Zoom is Maria Fouquier. So please, whenever you want to check what she is drawing, feel free to click on her name and spotlight for yourself so that you can see what she is doing right now. So thank you, Maria, for your work. Thank you, Visuality, for your support to us. I will continue with our project now. Yes, sorry, Tamas, I just technical help here. I removed the spotlight, but I'm still seeing it. So does everyone see the full? Okay, so it's working fine for everyone. Perfect, thank you. Yes, so about a few words, a very brief introduction about iRestore then. iRestore is a project that started back in September 2019. So we're closing this by the end of November this year. This is a project led by Terre Hungary in partnership with Terre Romania, Terre Greece, the European Forum for Restorative Justice, and Restorative Justice Netherlands. And this is a project co-funded by the European Union's Justice Program. The main objective of iRestore is really to promote the use of restorative justice amongst national stakeholders and the European stakeholders on the benefits of these practices with children, and in particular with child victims. And how have we done that throughout these 2 years? We have done that basically throughout 3 main aspects, which are research, capacity building, and advocacy. I will present you a few of the activities that we have done so far, but then after that, I'll let our Child Advisory Board members explain that and tell you the history, the story of our project. What have we done in terms of research? We have produced 4 research reports. One report on the European review of the state of art of restorative justice and child justice systems in Europe, doing a comparative work between what exists in many European countries, what are good practices, what are the challenges that they face when applying restorative justice in child justice systems. And we have also 3 country-specific reports, one from Albania, one from Greece, and one from Romania. These reports are available online. I'll share these links with you in a few on the chat so that if you want, you can take a look at these materials. And when it comes to capacity building, we developed with great contribution from our partners from the European Forum for Restorative Justice and Restorative Justice Netherlands, a national online training program. This was initially scheduled as a face-to-face training, but when COVID hit, we had to shift it to an online activity, and we did this very interesting trainings with multidisciplinary professionals, with judges, prosecutors, with school teachers, with probation officers in Albania, Greece, and Romania. And we trained 157 professionals altogether in these countries. In addition to that, we also have an e-learning course that is available free of cost online to everyone that is interested in the subject of restorative justice and children's rights. I will share also the link with you later today. And then it comes perhaps what is the most important aspect of our project, that is the child participation, the child empowerment component of iRestore. And we do that via methodology that is called Child Advisory Boards. And I realized that I said this term quite a lot today, but I haven't properly explained to you what is a Child Advisory Board. Child Advisory Board is a steering committee composed by children. And in the case of iRestore, we have one in Albania, one in Greece, and one in Romania. And they accompany us since the beginning of iRestore until now. And they work, as I said, as a steering committee to help us to youth-proof materials, to give their inputs on what we are doing in terms of child-friendly materials, to develop awareness-raising components by themselves, to speak in public and advocate for children's rights among their peers. They also contributed on the national online trainings by speaking directly with professionals and telling them how they see a child-friendly justice, how they see a way of upheld children's rights in their countries. So they are our youth advocates throughout the implementation of iRestore, and they are the main actors of a project, because when we're talking about child justice, we are very keen in saying that we are doing this with children and not only for them. So without further delay, I would like to let our Child Advisory Board members to tell you the story of iRestore. So I'll share a short video with you, and I hope that you will like it.
Do you know that restorative justice helps protects, heals, and empowers children victims of crime in their community? We do, and we wanted everyone to know it. We wanted children who have been victims of crime to have easier access to restorative justice practices.
We wanted children in contact with the law to know their rights and have them upheld. So, 2 years ago, Terre, the Hommes Europe, Greece and Romania, the European Forum for Restorative Justice, and Restorative Justice Nederland started the project iRestore, Better Protecting Child Victims' Rights Through Restorative Justice, co-founded by the European Union. iRestore focuses on 3 countries, Albania, Greece and Romania, and had 3 main missions: research, educate, advocate. The expert team produced 1 European review, had 3 national reports on restorative justice in cases involving child victims, so we know more about the situation in each country.
You can know more too. These publications are online for free. It emerged that, well, it's getting better, but the path is still very long. There are still a lot of challenges when applying restorative justice to children. One of the issues that we found out is that there are still many people working with child victims who still didn't know about restorative justice. The iRestore team started to train practitioners, lawyers, judges, decision makers. Every professional working with children is in contact with the law. And thanks to the free iRestore e-learning courses, more practitioners can continue to learn about restorative justice in child justice even after the project ends. And since nothing about children should be done without children, here we are. Our official name is Child Advisory Board members, but Youth Advocates for Children's Rights is a good way to describe us.
This children's rights superheroes is also good. We don't mind. We had a child advisory board for each country, and we helped the shaping iRestore at every step of the way. Our experiences and opinions, spreading the knowledge among other kids. We even created our own awareness and advocacy material and events to make children's rights known to everyone and child protection available to everyone.
We learned a lot during these 2 years, but we think that the iRestore adult team also learned a lot from us. Then COVID hit, and we had to move all our activities online, but this didn't stop us. iRestore could not, on its own, fix everything and ensure that every child would have access to child-friendly justice based on restorative practices.
But together, we successfully built the capacities of practitioners and children in Romania, Greece, and Albania, and raised their awareness on what child restorative justice is. We moved forward, and we will keep advocating and working for every child victim in Europe until we reach a truly fair, child-centered justice.
So I hope that you have enjoyed this. We are very, very happy with the contributions of our Child Advisory Board members, and I'd like to thank each one of them now. So from Albania, thank you very much, Anya, Denada, Ella, Albion, Bjorni, Eusebio, Monica, Kevin, Chancila, and Paula. From Greece, thank you very much, Fotish, Trinity, Jesse, Baran, and Fima. And from Romania, thank you very much, Alexandra, Andrada, Sabina Maria, Alexandra Maria, Stefan, Nadia, Andrei, Christina Veronica, Anka Sabina, Magdalena, Andrea, Lavinia, Anna, Bogdan, and Sabina. My apologies if I mispronunciated any of your names, but our thanks is it is something very, very sincere. We are very happy with your contributions, and thank you very much for your help, for advocating for children's rights and for restorative justice in your countries. I would like once again to highlight that we have with us today Maria Fulquier from Visuality, who is doing a live drawing of this session. So don't hesitate to take a look at what she is doing while we speak. And now I'm happy to give the floor to Annemieke Votius, our partner from Restorative Justice Netherlands, that will then invite Tailor for a discussion, for a talk about restorative justice and child victims. So please, Annemieke, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcos. Thank you, Mariama. Thank you, all the organizers, and very welcome to you all, also here from the Netherlands. Yes, I learned a lot during these last 2 years, and especially also from the youngsters. And thanks for this compilation that you just made, because it shows some of the very important aspects that come across children's rights, restorative justice, and real participation, because that is what you showed, how you can really participate and show what is important for you. And I know that is something that inspired my colleague Tali Gal from Israel as well. She works as the head of the School of Criminology at the University of Haifa. Welcome, Tali. It's a great honor to have you here with us. Your work with child victims when you were still practicing as a lawyer inspired you to start working in this restorative justice field. And we are happy to hear from you a little bit more about this model that you developed, a model trying to combine psychology aspects more with rights aspects, what psychologists and caretakers are doing, and what we as lawyers and people working within the criminal justice chain are often referring to, using human rights. And yeah, your model has inspired us also in this project, the needs rights model, to bring together these different aspects. And I'm happy that you can contribute to our session with this large audience to share a bit more of that. Welcome to you, and please, I give you the floor, Tali.
Thank you, Annemieke, for these beautiful words, and thank you, Marcus, and thank you, Maria. Thank you for inviting me here. It's a great pleasure and it's a great honor. I have to say, I'm really excited to be here, and I have several reasons for it. Before I begin my presentation, I have to tell you, first of all, I think it's the most satisfying thing to know that one's academic work becomes relevant and influential in real world, and working on restorative justice with child victims. This is something that I thought I was alone doing in the world in 10 and 15 years ago, and it's so satisfying to see now that things are moving, and being part of it is very satisfying. The second reason that I'm excited is because the process involved children and youth, and this is just great. It's the right thing to do. I'm so happy that you're here, teenagers, youngsters, and you've been part of this process. I think really it's the best way to do it. And the third reason is that because I have special sympathy for the 3 countries that are involved. Albania, I had a really good friend from Albania when I was doing my LLM studies in the United States. So I learned a lot about your country. Greece is a favorite tourist destination for many Israelis. I took my daughter when she was 12 to 5 days of quiet time in one of the islands. I won't tell which one because it was so quiet in Greece. So I remember it very fondly. It was 2 years ago. And Romania, this is where both my grandparents were born and raised. So very special feelings for Romania. So thank you again for inviting me here. I'll now open my presentation. Thank you for letting me share it. Since you invited me, I wanted to talk about, of course, conducting restorative justice with child victims, speaking a little bit about the model that I developed, but also focusing on the more practical heuristics that I thought would be helpful for anyone working with child victims in restorative justice. So why at all restorative justice with child victims? I know this is captive audience and I don't need to convince you, but I think still we should reiterate why restorative justice is so fitting for child and youth victims. And I find the four of the principles of restorative justice particularly meaningful for children and youth. Respect, the fact that restorative justice relies on treating people with respect, all people, no matter how old they are, where they're from, their nationality, their ethnicity, etc. It's a humanistic approach, and I think that it fits with any disempowered population. I consider children and youth as disempowered just because of their age and intergenerational inequality with adults. The second principle is of reparation, not only monetary reparation, but also, and maybe even more importantly, the symbolic reparation. The fact that restorative justice is a platform that invites harm doer, yes, perpetrators to take responsibility, to acknowledge what they've done, to acknowledge the harm they caused to a child, and ask for forgiveness. This is a critical point in any victim's life, and I think child victims in particular, because of the power imbalances between them and the older people in the room. The third principle or characteristic of restorative justice is that it gives room for emotional discharge. There is place to express emotions, whereas in the legal process, as you know, in the court, there is hardly any room for emotions, especially not the emotions that we're not as well used to express. For example, shame. Victims feel shame. Child victims feel shame, although, you know, they're not supposed to feel shame, but still they feel shame. And when victims, and at the same time, offenders and family members and others go beyond the more shallow emotion of anger, which characterizes the beginning of almost every restorative justice encounter, when they dig deep down and deeper and get to shame, to sorrow, to fear and to grief, then children and adults can feel the catharsis that helps them to rehabilitate and grow and heal from the victimization. And the fourth principle, and of course this is the most important and also the most challenging one, is participation. I think restorative justice is the ideal platform for conducting deliberative encounters where people can engage in real conversations, exchange views, not only deliver one-sided views, but really listen to one another, being able to convince and be convinced, and express themselves in various ways. So I think participation is so challenging with child victims that once we have this wonderful format that is called restorative justice, we have to use it and exhaust it for the benefit of child victims. So for these reasons, I started my project years ago when I was a PhD student on child victims and restorative justice. But of course, the other side of it is the challenges and the risks of involving the child victims in restorative justice. And these are why it is so complex and justifies, you know, serious work like you have been doing. So let's just reiterate some of the challenges that are related to involving child victims in restorative justice. Secondary victimization. I think each one of the people here understands that there is a great risk that when we bring to the room a young child or a youth, a teenager who has been victimized, they might feel re-victimized. because of meeting the offender, because of not being able to say what they want to say freely, because they may feel threatened or pushed into things. And this is a serious risk that, of course, every facilitator and maker needs to consider. Part of it is that sometimes adults manipulate young participants, children and youth, and not always they do it on purpose, but manipulation occurs all the time. Adults are used to being the decision makers, and it's really difficult for adults to seize power and to be able and to be willing to let the children convince them, to make them change their opinion. So it's very easy to see that that adults may, for example, let children speak, but then remain in their own opinion and not be willing to change their views. So this is something that we also need to be careful about. The third risk is, of course, pressuring children and youth to participate. Sometimes we are so kept on the idea that restorative justice is good for child victims that we want to see the child victim in the process, but they're not ready for it. They're not willing to, they want to forget all about it. It's not for everyone. And the risk is particularly high when people work with child offenders. Although this is, of course, a good reason to hold a restorative justice process, very often organizations and state agencies that work with youth offenders are busy or focusing on rehabilitating youth offenders. Again, this is a novel goal, but an outcome of it, a risk of an outcome of it is that the victims are pressured to participate, and we need to avoid it, of course. And the last challenge that I want to mention is the phrase Hennessy Haynes termed a room full of adults. Just let's imagine a single child entering a room full of adults. Some of them he or she knows, the others they don't know. Some of them are professionals used to being in these rooms, others are not, but still there is clear sense of alienation, loneliness, insecurity. It is so easy to just clamp down and not to speak in a room full of adults. And it's a real challenge to help these children to talk, to speak up. How do we do it? That's the question. How can we make participation not only present and available, but also meaningful? So, of course, these are the big questions that I'm sure you've all been handling throughout this year in this wonderful project. So I want to just to cover the model that I established or proposed that unites rights and needs together. So instead of going through the different stages, if you're interested, you can all find, the different layers. I just wanted to give you the snapshot of the full model. So the model is built of the circles are human rights of children, or the rights of children that I drew from the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And I assume that at this stage, everybody recognizes these rights, right? The four basic principles or general principles of participation, equality, development, and best interests. And the two specific rights that relate to child victims that are rehabilitation and protection against abuse. So these are 6 provisions. Of course, there are more, and other provisions in the CRC, in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, are also relevant, but I picked the most relevant ones, and they are all interrelated. They influence each other. The general principles, of course, teach us how to interpret the other rights, etc. The squares are 4 areas of knowledge that I found from the libraries of social work and psychology and social sciences in general. So these are knowledge bases regarding children's well-being, children as partners, procedural justice, and developmental victimology. And when I say social science libraries, I mean that these are studies that their methodologies were, at least for me as a lawyer, completely new. You know, empirical studies, that the language is different from the legal language, the methodology is different. And I try to create bridges between these two languages. So in doing this, I created 4 clusters of needs rights that you see in the elliptical circles. So the best interest cluster relates to the fact that every process and preparation and outcomes have to be assigned according to the child's developmental needs and interest, and they need to shape the program in general. This is the best interest cluster. The second cluster is the participation cluster, or the control cluster. And that this cluster tells us that we need to listen to children throughout the process, from the participation till the end. And the participation needs to be tailor-made, and we need to use participation enhancing techniques. And of course, we need to find ways to represent children when they're unable to represent themselves, or to just support them in their own representation. The third cluster is that of procedural justice. And here we learn that restorative justice has to be accessible equally to all participants or all children. We have to have special empowerment instruments, I would say, for children with special needs, because they need to be equalized with others, or to have equal opportunities. And the fourth cluster is the developmental cluster, which tells us that we need to find evidence-based programs, or develop evidence-based programs for all types of child victimization, sexual violence, property, other forms of child victimization. We have to have safety as a precondition and a goal of every process. And we have to have monitoring, and of course, all kinds of specific arrangements for children in different developmental points, children with special needs, children of different communities and backgrounds, etc. So this is, I know it's a cluttered, very full, very busy model. I know that, and I knew it when I wrote it. And that's why I came out with 8 heuristics for conducting restorative justice with child victims. The heuristics are called like this because they are not guidelines, they're not principles, they're not requirements, I would say. Rather, they're based on interdisciplinary research, so they're based on the model and the studies that I collected and the knowledge that I collected and the interpretation between the legal and the social science knowledge. Some of them have been confirmed. Some of these heuristics have been confirmed as valid. Some of them have not yet, but these are my assumptions based on the knowledge that is already out there. And of course, it will be great to have ongoing empirical validations of these rules. But what they do is they provide a good starting point for most cases. So that's why I call them heuristics rather than principles, because they're not binding, they're just starting points that you can trust they will be good enough, to start with until you find better rules to work with. So let's go through these different heuristics. The first heuristic is one of holism, seeing children as a whole, seeing children with different needs, wishes, interests, different parts of their lives, girls and boys, children of various ages. When we say children, we really flatten the concept of childhood. Children are so different from each other. They come from different backgrounds, etc. And when we work with them, we need to see each one of them as a whole and not just use the label of a victim. And I'm using victims because this is, the comfortable term to use when I speak about victims, but it does injustice to the specific child, a girl or a boy that is in front of us when we are conducting restorative justice. The second heuristic is that the process needs to be tailor-made according to that specific holistic child and the specific child's needs and wishes. So the choice of location, the timing of the process, who is going to be included in the invitation list, how do they participate? Who is going to represent them or go with them to the process? The number of the meetings, 1, 2, 3, the length of each meeting, when should we take breaks and what should happen in these breaks? What kind of food should be served? Special activities before the process or during it? What language should we use? How should the outcome plan look like? What kind of reparation should the child receive? And how should the apology look like? All of these have to be tailor-made. If we use a one-size-fits-all, it's not going to work because every child is different and because they have different wishes and needs. So if we are doing this approach, if we are using this tailor-made approach, of course, we have to be creative, we have to be flexible, we have to be willing to change as we go, because the views of the children and their wishes change over time, of course. And we need to have very trained facilitators who know how to hold the preparation in a very efficient way to learn about the child's wishes and needs. A third heuristic is considering children as our partners. We have to switch our perspective. Children are not those that we are helping or doing the work for them. They are our partners. They are the victims in the case that, we're talking about child victims, but they are our partners in the joint goal of reaching the best solutions, the best restorative solutions. We need their knowledge, we need their expertise in their lives, their expertise in their needs and wishes. And once we see children as partners, everything changes and participation becomes much more natural. Of course, participation is not always equal, and the level of participation relies on the age of the child, the nature of the child, their point of development. Each child is different, each case is different. I know from my own family, every one of my children behaves differently and would like to participate differently in different cases and in different processes. So we have to see participation as a continuum. This is the fourth heuristic. Participation is asking a child whether they want to express their view on a restorative justice session, and they would say, no, I'd rather my mother do it. This is a basic level of participation because we're asking them for their opinion, and they choose that their parent would represent them, would shield them against any activities. Participation is also being equal in the process and participate just like any other adult. This is the other end. But in between, there are so many levels and so many ways of participating that I'm sure you've worked on and discussed, so I won't get into details. A fifth heuristic that I'm particularly attached to, I don't know why, I think it's one of the most natural things to think about children. The realization that children, especially young ones, speak in different languages, not only in terms of whether it's Albanian or Greek or Hebrew or English. It's a different language. It's child language. It's their own language. And it's our responsibility to let their message be understood by the adults, the professionals, etc. So some children speak, some children write poems, some children draw, some children play sports, and we need to find a way to let their voice fly out and be free and be understood by others. The sixth heuristic is the let go. And this is also something that grew from my encounters with professionals, especially social workers, but also others. We as adults have the tendency to protect our children, to think that because they've been through so much, child victims, of course, we want to shield them against drama, shield them against harsh language, shield them against conflict. And the outcome of it is that we shield them against being involved in restorative justice processes. And my understanding of it is that just like we as parents and professionals and educators, etc., learn to let the children go, let them cross the the road when they are ready to eat, or go to parties when they are ready to eat, or even drive a motorcycle when they are ready to eat and when they are in the legal age. We have to let them also participate in a conference or in a restorative justice. Being difficult doesn't mean being bad for them, being harmful for children. A challenge is not a bad thing. Actually, a challenge is very often a very good thing. Even if they feel that the restorative justice process is a tough process, still they can gain so much out of it. So the key is to find the scaffolding. Scaffolding is a term from child participation studies. We build around protections around the children to help them be where they need to be. It's difficult to do it alone, so they need the scaffolding. But once they're ready, once they've gained the power to be there, we can remove the scaffolding or leave it there, but let them be at the center. So this is the way of letting them go, letting them be in the front, even though it's difficult, when they're ready, when they want to do it. The seventh heuristic is that restorative justice itself, the process itself, should be seen as a goal, no matter what the outcomes are. The process, seeing justice done, seeing how to communicate with others, seeing the empathy expressed to them, and being able to express empathy is something that helps them develop emotionally and in other ways as well. Sometimes it helps them overcome post-trauma because they meet the trigger, they meet the perpetrator in a very safe and controlled environment. So the process itself can have such amazing outcomes, no matter what the concrete outcomes are or the reparative plan is. And the last heuristic that I included in my list is that advocacy should be the kind of an empowering advocacy. So when we represent children, whether we are lawyers or advocates or just family members that speak on behalf of the children in a restorative justice process, we need to remember that it's not going to help them if we speak for them. They have to be able to speak for themselves if they want to. Of course, if they don't want to, we need to be ready to step in. But we have to let them feel that they can do it, that they are empowered, that they are able to do it, and that we're not taking over their role. So these are the 8 heuristics. And I want to conclude just with a few points of why is it important? Why should we care? Why should we use a needs rights model in engaging child victims in restorative justice? So first of all, the needs rights model provides a discursive bridge between lawyers and social workers. I've seen it when I was a lawyer, that my colleagues spoke in a rights language, while social workers speak in needs language, and they not always meet. For example, when lawyers speak of participation, of course, human rights lawyers, participation, social workers and therapists maybe speak about control, a sense of control. So the model bridges between these terms and terminologies. This is the first advantage of the model. The second one is that the model provides a universal model, a humanistic model, which can be applied differently in various communities. It doesn't get into the details of specific guidelines. These should and must and are supposed to be different in every community because there are different cultures, different roles, different social norms, etc. So it's a general model and it's a universal one. It's based on universal knowledge. And the third and last advantage that I want to state is that it is based on empirical and normative strong basis of the CRC, the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which has been approved by almost all countries in the world, and robust empirical findings in so many areas in social sciences. So if this is a contribution that is relevant to you people who are working with child victims and restorative justice, I can only be humbled and honored to help promote this idea and this program. So thank you all, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Taligal. That was a very clear presentation about the work and combining these important areas of social sciences and legal aspects. Yeah, there are a few questions already put in the chat, and we have only 10 minutes left, is what I heard from the chair of this session. So, but maybe I would like to share first one from Anne-Grete Johansson from Estonia, who asks, if we have cases between parents and children, how to balance the power, and what are your thoughts about how to use restorative justice in those cases?
Oh, that's a great question, and thanks, Anne-Grete. It's great to see you here. Of course, this is a case of extreme power imbalance because children are, well, I don't need to explain this, it's clear. So I would think involve as many people as possible from the extended family, but also outside the family, friends of the child, teachers, or people who have a special role with the child. I think it's crucial. I mean, if it's challenging to restorative justice, but it's even more challenging to other platforms. So it's better to have a discussion in restorative justice. There are all kinds of programs doing restorative justice in child protection cases. The most famous one is the family group decision-making experience in Newfoundland and Labrador in Canada, with Joan Pennell and Gail Burford leading this experiment. It was a great success. And anybody who is interested, Anne-Grete, I don't know if you have this, but I can refer you to their writing. So there are restorative justice processes handled in child protection cases as well. And it is suitable for these cases. Of course, you have to take special measures to protect children against manipulation, against threatening, against pressure, etc. And the basic tool is by inviting other people in the community to the circle.
Yeah, wonderful. Was that according a good answer to your questions, Anne-Grete? Or do you want to add something? I don't see you, I realized, but then the next question, Emanuela, would you like to pose it yourself?
Yes, if you want. Hello, Tali. Nice to see you again since many years. So in my question, actually, I was wondering if you are aware of any restorative justice practices where other children are involved as supporting persons or even as co-facilitators in the process. And I was asking this just because once I had this discussion with a mediator from Belgium, because I was wondering, in cases of gender-based violence or in cases of intercultural conflicts, you would include mediators representing both sides, so men and women, or representing the different socio-cultural backgrounds of the participants. And I was wondering if you're aware of any practices where children can be involved really, so other children as supporting persons or as co-facilitators. And if so, or if not, if you can maybe give a reflection on that.
Hi, Manuela. Great to see you again, too. So you're asking several questions, all great questions. First of all, whether children can support each other, definitely. And I know, at least in Israel, in juvenile offending conferences, restorative justice conferences, they often invite or offer the child victims to come with a friend, and also the offenders, actually, to come with a friend. I know that at least from Australia, from the RISE projects, where I did a qualitative work, I remember at least one case where the young offender brought several friends with him, and the conference wasn't balanced. So the victim, the child victim, the young victim, and his family felt secluded, actually, and undernumbered, outnumbers. So, you know, you have to balance it, but it's definitely possible. Whether moderators can be used, I don't know of any program like this, but it's a great idea. And also you asked about ethnic conflicts. So, for example, in Israel, I know of one very famous case where two Orthodox Jewish young men burned a car of a young Arab student. And there was a restorative justice conference between these offending youth, the Jewish youths, and the Arab victims. And the moderators were one Arab and one Jewish. And of course, this was in times of, it's always in Israel, but in high time of stress between Jewish and Arabic communities in Israel. And many people arrived from both communities, and it was an amazing process. I wish, there were more like this. I think, peace would have come sooner if we had more processes like this, but it was a great success. I know that the communities got closer. It's a joint city, so there are many conflicts, but also many opportunities for coexistence in this area. It was very successful. I can send you a link to writing about it. So this is possible, but of course it takes a lot of preparation. You have to have equal parties, etc.
Yeah, these case examples are often really showing the potential of restorative justice interventions indeed. I see one more question in the chat, and that is from Bruno. Would you like to share, Bruno?
Hi, Annemieke. At this moment, I don't think participants can unmute themselves.
Okay, then I'll do the question, and it's about, are you aware of restorative justice intervention involving children with intellectual or psychosocial disabilities?
Not enough. I think this is, if you ask me what I would like to see in the future, I think this is one of the challenges for restorative justice, to find ways to include, to be more inclusive to children and youth with special needs or disabilities. I remember again from the RISE experiment in Australia, there was one case with a young victim who was who had a reduced cognition. Mm-hmm. And he felt terrible at the conference. It wasn't tuned toward his needs. And in the interview afterwards, he said, him and his mother said that they only wanted the conference to end. They agreed to everything. The outcome was that the offender would take the victim to a dinner at McDonald's. And he agreed to it because he just didn't want to argue. Of course, this didn't happen. He just wanted to go home. It was really one of the bad experiences there. I think, restorative justice is able, that's the platform, a flexible platform that can be adjusted to children with special needs, but it takes more work, more preparation, more specialty. You have to involve experts with the specific disability to know what to do. So sorry, I don't have a better answer.
Now, to add to that, also in the Netherlands, we are working on this particular area and trying to develop also some tools for restorative justice interventions that are especially made for this group of children with these disabilities. We are working together with the School for Applied Sciences in Leiden and an expert working there who already made different tools for the police, for prison system, etc. And it's a whole process. And of course, I've seen as a mediator myself also sometimes children with disabilities, but then often there are already either parents or support persons there who can assist people with such disabilities to assist them to make it a good and relevant process without too much disbalance. That the kind of things you describe in general, this is still a risk when you work with young people and adults, but especially if they then also have this additional problem or to understand. So language and taking care of all these aspects is indeed very important. Okay. a few more minutes, and Tali, I would like to know a little bit more about your experience in Israel, because we have been working in 3 different countries. You mentioned them, you have even nice connections with them, but what is your biggest experience in Israel with restorative justice for young people, and what you would like to share with us, what we can learn from maybe?
So in Israel, since 2012, youth restorative justice conferences are held almost, well, not in every case, but in every case they consider the appropriateness of restorative justice. This is again with youth offenders. And of course, many of the victims of these young offenders are children. So there are large numbers relative to Israel, it's a small country, of conferences held in youth offending. And this is great, and they're learning a lot, and they are conducting the conferences. I think they have the same problems as in other places in the world where there is a lot of restorative justice with youth offenders, the risk of co-opting the victims, you know, for the benefit of rehabilitating offenders, but they are trying to do it, you know, child-focused and child-sensitive. I think they would learn a lot from your process and your outcomes. I would definitely share your outcomes with the Israeli colleagues. A new development in Israel is out of the restorative justice realm, but since a year ago, every child victim of a serious offense, sexual or serious violence offense, is entitled to to an advocate, to a lawyer, to represent them in court, which is a change in the adversary system almost. They're not, they don't become a party in the process, but still they are represented. And these advocates can actually, at least in theory, offer the option of restorative justice if the children want it. Whether they do it, no. They are busy in, you know, promoting the adversarial rights, the procedural rights of child victims, which is great. I would like to see more restorative justice. And the other thing that I would hope for Israel is that there would be more restorative justice processes in cases of sexual abuse. So there is a program, a great program, actually, a voluntary program, non-governmental program for restorative justice in sexual offenses. Most of the victim, and it's victim focused. It's very thorough. It's based on collaboration between lawyers and social workers or psychologists, very victim focused. Some of the victims are minor, are under the age of 18, but that's not their speciality. I would like to see more specialized programs for child victims of sexual offenses. I think it's a unique area requiring unique knowledge, and the criminal justice process is not good enough. It's bad, it's harmful, and so many children don't report their harm because they know the end point is the criminal justice process, and they don't want it. They don't want their perpetrator to go to prison. They don't want to expose themselves in the criminal process. They need programs like restorative justice, and I think in sexual offenses, it's even more crucial than in other offenses. So that's my hope for Israel and also for other places as well. Yeah.
No, super. Thank you very much, Tali Gal, for your clear contribution and for your advocacy, also for this last group. And I agree with also in severe cases, also in sexual violence cases, also in domestic violence cases, there's so much potential to use restorative justice, even though that's debated in some places, and we still need to continue that discussion. I saw in the chat that several people are really eager to read more of your material and want to see the PowerPoint. Mariama told us it will be shared through a Child Hub. Yeah, a little bit advocacy for the book that I'm working on and that you contributed on restorative justice in a children's rights perspective, which is actually currently being printed and will be available before the end of this year, with a beautiful contribution chapter by Tali Gal. So I invite you to look around and see if it is shared through the European Forum for Restorative Justice and other means. Okay.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here, as I said, and I'm happy to share the presentation. And you can find my other writing in Google Scholar or, in any other area. I'm happy to share anything you send me. I'll share the full text. Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Wonderful. Okay, then I give the floor back to Marcus to continue with the rest of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Annemieke. Thank you, Taligal. It's very, very interesting presentation, very inspiring to hear you. Thank you very much for your contribution. Yes, so before we continue with our agenda today, I'd like to spotlight once again the work that is being done by Maria Fouquier from Visuality. This is what she has drawn while Taligal and Annemieke were discussing. So this is a very interesting resource that we're having here with us today. So thank you, Maria, for your contribution. We will share these drawings with you after the conference. So this is what you can see so far. Okay, so continuing with our agenda, we are very tiny bit behind schedule, but we'll have a break very soon where we can compensate that. And right now, what we will have is the presentation of the child-led awareness raising materials that were developed by our Child Advisory Board members. Well, once again, thank you to everyone for being here with us today. And I will now give the floor to Nareda from our iRestore coordinator, Albania. So Nareda, if you are speaking in Albanian, please choose the Albanian audio channel. And then you can go ahead. And then you let me know.
I will have the presentation in Albanian, yes.
Okay, then you can let me know in English whenever you want me to share the materials. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Përshëndetje, unë në rast të parë do doja të falenderoj të Heuristics për mundësinë e dhënë për të punuar me një grup mrekullueshëm fëmijësh në këto 2 vite në Shqipëri, në kuadër të projektit iRestore. Dhe përpara se unë të bëj një përshkrim të produkteve që fëmijët kanë sjellë në kuadër të kësaj fushate advokimi, do doja të them pak fjalë në lidhje me punën e bërë me fëmijët në këto 2 vite dhe rezultatet e arritura. Gjatë këtij projekti, fëmijët e bordit këshillimor në Shqipëri kanë patur mundësinë të njihen me njëri tjetrin, të ndërveprojnë, shkëmbejnë eksperjenca dhe të mësojnë më shumë për një fushë tërësisht të re në eksperiencën e tyre, siç është drejtësia për të mitur dhe me veçanti mbi aplikimin e praktikave restauruese. Përmes takimeve të ndryshme që ata kanë patur me profesionistë e institucionet kryesore të drejtësisë për fëmijë, por edhe trajnime të ndryshme, e në veçanti një vizitë online me ekspert ndërkombëtar, fëmijët kanë patur mundësi të njohin definicionet kryesore dhe parimet e drejtësisë restauruese, të shtrojnë pyetjet e tyre, të paraqesin pasiguritë e tyre, si të diskutojnë mbi cilat janë mundësitë për zbatimin e këtyre praktikave në kontekstin ku ata jetojnë. Fëmijët kanë sjellë në këtë projekt eksperiencat e tyre se si realisht zhvillohen konfliktet, si adresohen ato dhe në këndvështrimin e tyre. Konteksti jon ka shumë tepër nevojë për promovimin e këtyre praktikave. Në veçanti në këndvështrimin e fëmijëve në shkolla është shumë e nevojshme që të ketë fushata shumë masive, si për stafin shkollor dhe për fëmijët, për ndërgjegjësimin dhe për informimin mbi praktikat restauruese. Megjithatë, pavarësisht sa fëmijët mësuan dhe përfituan nga ky projekt, si në aspektin e përftimit të informacionit, ashtu dhe të njohjes apo dhe të përmirësimit të aftësive sociale, rrugtimi jonë në fakt ndeshit disa sfida të njohura ndërkombëtarisht që lidhen me shfaqjen e pandemisë dhe me kohëzgjatjen e saj. Specifike për kontekstin shqiptar ka qenë se ne kemi zhvilluar takimet online vetëm në 2 muajt e parë me këtij instrumenti për shkak të masave të ashpra të asaj kohe. Por më tej ne kemi zhvilluar gjatë gjithë projektit takime fizike, të mundësuara edhe nga lërimi i mëtejshëm i masave. Kështu që pavarësisht të gjithave në këndvështrimin e fëmijëve, ajo që ishte konkluzioni në këtë interval midis takimeve online dhe fizike, ishte se patjetër asgjë nuk mund të zëvendësojë ndërveprimin direkt njerëzor, sa të fuqi që sjell komunikimi direkt përmes njerëzve që takohen realisht. Dhe duke u ndalur pikërisht në këtë pjesë tek udhëtimet, këto në fakt, siç mund të merret në mend lehtësisht, ishin një element shumë tërheqës për fëmijët, sepse kjo do të thoshte që ata të udhtonin, të njihnin në vende të reja, profesionistë dhe moshatar nga vendet e tjera dhe të shkëmbenin informacione dhe eksperienca të ndryshme. Megjithatë, pavarësisht këtyre vështirësive dhe sfidave dhe mosdhënies mundësisë për të zhvilluar këto aktivitete siç ishin planifikuar, ishte mbretëlënse dhe surprizuese do thoja që vijimësia dhe përkushtimi që fëmijët patën në këtë projekt. Për asnjë moment ata nuk u shkëputën dhe kanë vijuar deri në aktivitetet e fundit, jo vetëm anë pjesëmarrjes, por edhe me një angazhim dhe kontribut real në të gjitha aktivitetet e tij. Në lidhje me përmbajtjen e fushatës, në fakt përgatitjet për të kanë filluar për disa muajsh, ku fillimisht fëmijët përzgjodhen temën që do të ishte në thelb të produkteve, të materialeve që ata do të prodhonin, që ishte bullizmi dhe konfliktet në shkolla. Ata donin të fokusonin të gjithë fushatën e tyre në këtë fushë. Dhe mëtej ka nisur puna e cila zgjati 2 muaj për prodhimin e materialeve, dhe duhet të thënë që fëmijët në këtë proces u mbështetën dhe u orientuar nga Fondacioni Shqiptar për zgjidhjen e konflikteve, që është një organizat lider në Shqipëri për promovimin dhe zbatimin e praktikave restauruese, por edhe për rritjen e kapaciteteve të profesionistëve në këtë fushë. Kështu në këtë proces, fëmijët bën një ndarje në 3 grupe sipas preferencave të tyre dhe përshtatshmërisë që ata kishin në raport me produktin që do të sillnin, me materialin që do të sillnin. Kështu do ta filloja me grupin që zgjodhi posterin, dhe do të kërkoja ndihmën e Markosit në lidhje me ndarjen e posterit në këtë moment, të imazhit të posterit, në mënyrë që unë njëkohësisht të mund të ndaj përshkrimin e tij. Ka pasur shumë slogani i shkruar në qendër të posterit është të përdorim praktika të restauruese për trajtimin e konflikteve në shkolla. Ka pasur shumë diskutime me fëmijët në lidhje me posterin, nëse duhet ishte thjesht një imazh, nëse duhet ishte një slogan. Në fund u zgjodh që të ishin të dyja, por qëllimi ka qenë që ato të ishin sa më të thjeshta dhe sa më eksplicite, pa imazhe apo forma të shprehur të nënkuptuara, duke qenë se fëmijët menduan se shumica e atyre që do të shihnin mund mos kenë informacion për këtë temë. Imazhi i fëmijëve në rreth, në formën e rrethit, u preferua dhe u zgjodh për faktin se tregon një barazi në proces dhe faktin se askush nuk dominon të tjerët pavarësisht shkallës dhe përkatësisë së grupit social të cilit i përket. Po kështu dhe titulli, të përdorim praktika të restauruese në shkolla, ishte një mesazh i qartë që synon të nxjisë të gjithë ata që e lexojnë për të kërkuar më shumë informacion lidhur me drejtësinë restauruese. Mëtej, kjo ishte sa i përket posterit. Në lidhje me fletpalosjen, nëse mund të kalojmë tek imazhi i fletpalosjes. Në mënyrë të thjeshtuar sërish, fëmijët u përpoqen që t'japin në mënyrë koncize informacionin që ata kanë mësuar gjatë këtyre 2 viteve. Në fillim përdorën artin në faqen e parë, me anë të asaj lules e cila përmban mesazhe dhe të dhëna mbi terma koncepte të drejtësisë restauruese, po ashtu edhe në faqe të tjera ka imazhe që janë si metafora të shprehjes së procesit restaurues, të cilat janë zgjedhur për ta pasqyruar thelbin e saj. Po ashtu në fletpalosje ndodhet një informacion se kur mund ta përdorin drejtësinë restauruese, kur mund të drejtohen në këtyre praktikave. Dhe në fund fare fëmijët kanë zgjedhur të tregojnë mbi ekzistencën e tyre si bord këshillimor dhe çfarë mund të ofrojnë ata për fëmijët në situata të ndryshme vulnerabiliteti që mund të jenë viktima të dhunës apo jo. Gjatë kësaj periudhe, pas prodhimit të materialeve, ne në fakt kemi qenë në kontakt me disa, përveç se ato do të shpërndahen nga fëmijët në ambientet e shkollave, që janë institucionet kryesore ku do të ketë shpërndarje, kontakte kemi pasur me institucione të tjera që lidhen drejt për drejt në punën e tyre me drejtësinë restauruese, të cilët profesionistë që kanë shfaqur interes për të ndarë produkte në ambientet e tyre të punës ku kanë kontakte të përditshme me fëmijët. Gjithashtu në fund të produkteve të këtij lloji është edhe një video e prodhuar. Edhe me video një lloj informacioni i përzgjedhur dhe imazhet janë të gjitha të përzgjedhura tërësisht nga fëmijët. Në lidhje me videon, do thoja tjetër se mesazhi hyrës u zgjodhi ishte i qartë. Unë riparoj marrëdhëniet, që u konsiderua nga fëmijët si mesazhi më i fuqishëm i gjithë këtij projekti dhe aktiviteteve të vjeçare të tij. Një vajzë dhe një djalë nga bordi këshillimor janë folës në këtë video. Kanë zgjedhur një gjuhë të qartë dhe kanë formuluar ide që kanë lidhje me bullizmin dhe konfliktet në shkolla. Dhe ata kanë zgjedhur në tekst që përmes empatisë të shprehen sa më shumë dhe të sjellin sa më shumë ndjenjat e personit që bullizohet, në mënyrë që të çojnë drejt një të kuptuarit më të mirë, por edhe të ndihmuarit për fëmijët viktima. Dhe përveç kësaj, mesazhi ka synuar që të preket edhe të gjithë aktorët që mund të jenë së bashku për të trajtuar ndryshe këto fenomene. Ndryshe nga trajtimi i zakonshëm që gjejnë ato në praktik me anë të mbledhjeve formale apo masave disiplinore e tjerë, ketë një qasje alternative e cila në fakt prek edhe autorin në drejtim të marrjes së përgjegjësisë dhe të arritjes deri tek ndjenja e pendesës. Sidoqoftë, përveç kësaj video të konceptuar për të shpërndarë në rrjetet sociale nga fëmijët, për eventin e sotëm fëmijët kanë ndarë edhe një video përshëndetse ku kanë përfshirë mesazhin e tyre të përcjellë përmes produkteve, edhe audiencën kanë folur edhe për audiencën për të cilën ato i drejtohen. Kjo në fakt është bërë edhe në pamundësi që fëmijët të përfshiheshin me ndërhyrje direkte në takimin e sotëm, për shkak të grafikut shumë të ngarkuar të shkollës, të kurseve profesionale dhe të punëve ku ata janë të përfshirë. Unë do ta mbyllja fjalën këtu për t'i lënë në vendin videos, por do të thoja vetëm edhe 2 informacione pozitive në përfundim të gjitha aktiviteteve me fëmijët. Një nga fëmijët e bordit këshillimor sapo është regjistruar dhe ka nisur fakultetin e drejtësisë në Tiranë, nisur dhe nga interesi që ajo ka pasur që prej fillimit për fushën e ligjit dhe i përforcuar edhe gjatë këtyre 2 viteve të projektit. Po ashtu, një fëmijë tjetër ka shprehur interesin për t'u bashkuar Kongresit Botror për drejtsinë me fëmijët. Ju faleminderit për kohën edhe do t'ju ftoja që të ndiqni dhe videon e prodhuar nga bordi këshillimor i fëmijëve në Shqipëri.
Just a second, I'm going to share that video in a few.
Bullizmi është një dukuri shumë e përhapur kohët e fundit, e cila po merr një zhvillim shqetësues. Ka një tendencë zhvillimi që në fëmijërinë e hershme e deri në rini. Është justifikuar si veprime sporadike të moshës që ndodhin mes fëmijëve, duke mos marrë parasysh pasojat e mundshme për të dyja palët. Nëse nuk trajtohen këtë sjellje, bëhen shqetësuese si për nxënësit, prindërit, ashtu edhe për mjediset shkollore.
Secili nga ne mbase ka përjetuar një episod dhune apo bullizmi. Secili nga ne ka përjetuar shumë emocione në atë moment, emocione negative dhe shkatruese. Sa keq jemi ndjerë kur asnjëri nga shokët tanë nuk e kuptoi e nuk na mbështeti ne. Sa shumë kishim nevojë. Sot që e kuptojmë, ne duhet të kontribuojmë që luftojmë dhunën dhe bullizmin. Në radhë të parë, duke parandaluar dhe pastaj duke trajtuar.
Nëse 2 nxënës janë përfshirë në një rast dhune ose konflikti, kjo gjë do të kërkojë zgjidhje në mjediset e shkollës, që situata të mos degradojë më shumë jashtë këtyre. Aktorët e shkollës, si mësues, psikolog, nxënës të trajnuar për zgjidhjen e konflikteve, duhet të përpiqen të këshillojnë nxënësit e përfshirë në konflikt, duke bërë të ditur praktikat restauruese dhe duke ndihmuar ata të ecin drejt një marrëveshje, që përfshin respektin e përbashkët, mirëkuptimin dhe përgjegjësinë. Praktikat restauruese sjellin së bashku nxënësit, mësuesit, prindërit, psikologun e shkollës, oficerin e sigurisë në shkollë, drejt një qëllimi të përbashkët, të parandalojnë dhe trajtojnë dhunën dhe bullizmin në mjediset shkollore, duke reaguar të gjithë sipas rolit këshillues që kanë.
I will show you a second one with comments from our child advisor board members from Albania now.
Me anë të produkteve që kemi sjell, ne mundohemi që të shpërndajmë një pjesë të vogël të asaj që kemi mësuar nëpërmjet projektit iRestore.
Menduam që posteri, fletpalosjet dhe video të shërbejnë për shkollat tona ku të shihen nga moshatarët tanë, mësuesi dhe profesionistë të tjerë. Ne synojmë të japim informacion për të gjithë ata që nuk kanë dëgjuar mbi drejtsinë restauruese.
So thank you, Norida. Thank you everyone for these presentations. This was the presentation of the materials produced by our child advisory board members in Albania. So thank you again to all of you. I'll now give the floor to Panagiotta, our colleague, our iRestore coordinator in Greece, who will present the materials done with the child advisory board members in Greece. So please, Panagiotta, the floor is yours now.
Hello to all, and thank you all for being here today. I'll try to keep it short because I see we are a bit behind time schedule. I need to say first that the CAB members in Greece have done an amazing work. They have, in the beginning, there was online sessions, but they had presentations, they had discussions with professionals who work in the field of justice. But especially in regards to the awareness-raising material, the CAB members have experimented with different forms of art in order to raise awareness regarding restorative justice on many different levels. During the 8-day workshop in the summer, they participated in a media and art workshop, which included doodle workshop, stencil tutorials, and graffiti design. They produced several types of materials, such as comic strips and stickers, and all of the work was so fantastic that it has been excruciatingly difficult for us, and especially for the comms team, to decide what to choose. I will first present the poster on protection of victims, which of course will be in TDH's offices, but it's also available for anyone who might want a copy. So I will share my screen. And there we go. As you can see, it has been created with the stencil technique, and I invite here any CAB member from Greece who is present to feel free and jump in and discuss about their experience while creating this.
Just sorry to interrupt you, Panagiotta. If any of the CAB members in Greece you want to say something, please let us know in the chat, and we'll make you host of the session so you can unmute yourselves. Thank you.
Many people, we have covered what is restorative justice, but many people will ask why restorative justice. Well, for those asking, the CAB members from Greece have created the flyer explaining, actually giving 7+1 arguments in favor of restorative justice. I think you can all see the font. Again, if any of the CAB members wants to explain the arguments further, feel free to join.
I think Trinity wants to say something, Panagiotta.
Okay.
I asked our team to make her co-host so she can unmute herself. Yeah, now you can unmute yourself, Trinity. I see that you are a co-host.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Trinity, and I'm one of the members of CAB from Greece. The first picture that you saw before this it's actually mine. It was one of the graffiti pieces that me and my friends, who are the other members, had worked on. And basically we were told to think of one of the rights that we held very important to us and draw something representing that. So my right that I wanted to present was the right of protection for children. And what I did basically was I had a hand and then I did a little flower in it because flowers are very delicate and so are children, so we should protect them. And then this that you see in front of here, it's what me and my fellow camp members said. Nothing has been edited, it's all our words. We were very surprised when we saw this last week, Tuesday, and it was just, it's so amazing to see this, and it's how we're making a difference with these words, with our other words. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trinity. It's true, we have not edited not even a single word from their arguments. The flyer has already been disseminated both from the children and from professionals, but we were planning to disseminate it even further. Additionally, a short promo video was created. Let me.
Generally, I wanted to try something new because I haven't done something like this before, and I felt like I could make a difference somehow.
I wanted to join CAB because I've never seen anything like this before. Coming from Africa, where the justice system is very, very bad, it was interesting to see how things were done here in a European society, and I just also wanted to make a difference for children as well.
I think we are working to get towards getting our voice heard by the general public, and when that moment comes, we're going to be very satisfied with all the work that we've done so far.
They don't just look at the victim's perspective, and through all this justice and everything, we actually try to look from both perspectives, both offenders and victims' perspectives.
Child-friendly justice for victims includes the great emotional support being provided along the way, and taking care of factors that contribute to emotional feelings of distress. This is also important. It entails things like actually addressing the root of the problem, not just punishing them in a way that is bound to aggravate them, not educate them and teach them, and lead to more delinquency upon their release.
Επιλέξαμε τουλάχιστον 40 επαγγελματίες και συζητήσαμε για την κατάσταση στην Ελλάδα και το εξωτερικό. Το σημαντικό όμως είναι ότι ένα σχέδιο δράσης θα μπορούσε να οδηγήσει σε φιλικότερο σύστημα δικαιοσύνης και τα παιδιά. Ελπίζουμε ότι θα εμπνεύσει περισσότερους ανθρώπους και αρχές ώστε να προωθήσουν την αποτελεσματική δικαιοσύνη στην Ελλάδα.
But I think the most impressive and definitely the most long-term awareness-raising material that has been created by the CAB members in Greece, it's a big graffiti that the children designed and painted themselves on a wall on their school, of course with the school's permission. As you can see, the quality is impeccable. It looks quite professional, and we believe that it will have a long-term impact on both inspiring other students to get involved with restorative justice and protection of children, and to raise awareness to both students and personnel regarding all these sensitive issues. I'm going to stop sharing. I really hope that I didn't take much time.
Thank you, Panagiota. Thank you, Trinity. Thank you all the CAB members from Greece for your work there. I see Fotis, Jesse, Baram, Fima. Thank you very much for your work. in Greece. It is really amazing what you have done there. Thank you. I see Calliope as well with us. So thank you, Poppy. Calliope is the one that is running, that is facilitating the CAB, the Child Advisory Board sessions in Greece. So thank you for your work, for your support, for being here with us today. Look, we will have now the presentation from our team in Romania, but I would like to reinforce that after that, we will have a break, and following the break, we will have a discussion around these materials that you have seen so far. So I will highlight to all the CAB members, the Child Advisory Board members who are with us today, if you want to stay with us after the break and share a bit more about your thoughts about what you have done in this last 2 years of iRestore, we would be very, very happy to hear from you. So I will pass the floor now. I will give the floor now to Laura. So please, Laura, you can take the floor for the team in Romania. Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Laura, and I'm the Deputy Director for Holism in Romania, and also the Project Manager for iRestore in the last months of project implementation. In Romania, we've worked together with a group of 15 children and young people, very enthusiastic and very inspiring and very involved in what they wanted to present to the professionals. And their ideas were around creating 4 materials that could be used either by professionals or by children in schools. And what you will see in the following minutes, you will see a poster, a video, and 2 brochures, one created for children and one created for professionals. While I will show you these materials, you will also see very short videos of some of the children who presented these materials during our national event, our conference that was held last week in Romania. So I will just start with the first short video of Andrei, who introduced the video to all the participants.
Bună dimineața tuturor, numele meu este membru în bordul consultativ. Și mai devreme, în cadrul proiectului s-a desfășurat și o campanie de awareness.
Sorry, Laura, I don't think we see the video.
No?
Yeah, at least I was not seeing it. I don't know if I'm the only one.
Any other reactions?
No. Yeah, I also didn't see it. Maybe did you share the screen? Maybe on share and reshare. But we hear the audio.
Yeah, that's it. We were hearing the audio. Maybe when you share the screen, there is an option to select the windows that you want to share. So maybe if you try to find the video there.
Nu mai puțin.
Now we see your screen, Laura. Yeah, now it's perfect.
Bună dimineața tuturor, numele meu este Andrei Constantin și sunt membru în bordul consultativ al tinerilor din proiectul iRestore. După cum am menționat și Cecilia mai devreme, în cadrul proiectului s-a desfășurat și o campanie de awareness în care au fost create mai multe materiale informative. Iar acum a venit momentul să facem un prim pas și să vedem unul dintre aceste materiale. Este vorba despre un video în care noi am încercat să prezentăm conceptul de justiție restaurativă astfel încât să fie pe înțelesul tuturor, spunem noi, un limbaj cât se poate de clar și care să nu fie foarte vag. Și fără să o lungesc eu foarte mult, haideți să ne uităm împreună la video și vă încurajăm, dacă aveți feedback asupra lui, să ni-l spuneți sau să scrieți în chat după ce îl vizualizați. Bună dimineața tuturor!
Just a second, now is the video.
Justiția restaurativă este o abordare a justiției orientată spre repararea, pe cât posibil, a daunei cauzate de o infracțiune. Un element esențial al justiției restaurative este participarea activă a părților implicate, respectiv victime, făptuitori. După caz, pot participa și membrii ai comunității care se reunesc în mod voluntar cu ajutorul unui facilitator pentru a vorbi despre dauna cauzată și consecințele sale și pentru a identifica mijloacele pentru repararea răului comis. Justiția restaurativă se ocupă în principal de situațiile unde conflictul are mai degrabă o natură infracțională. Există totuși practici restaurative care au scopul de a crea un mediu restaurativ printr-o abordare mai amplă. Spre exemplu, sunt folosite practicile restaurative în școli, atât pentru a rezolva conflicte, cât și pentru a preveni altele pe viitor, indiferent dacă acestea ar avea sau nu o natură infracțională. În România, ar fi prematur să discutăm despre justiție restaurativă, însă există numeroase aplicații potențiale, printre care specialiștii numără exemplul anterior al prevenției conflictelor în școli.
Proiectul iRestore este un proiect regional. Sunt implicate 3 țări, Albania, Grecia și România, și pe parcursul a 2 ani, tinerii au învățat foarte multe despre justiție restaurativă. Au avut parte de întâlniri cu specialiști, au trecut printr-un proces foarte intens de învățare și la sfârșitul celor 2 ani îi pregătim pentru diseminarea în mediul lor a cât mai multor informații.
Lucrează împreună sau separat? E la alegerea lor. Poate și să vrea doar unul să se vadă și atunci se găsește o modalitate, fie, spre exemplu, poate să discute cu o altă victimă sau cu un alt agresor dintr-un caz similar ca să înțeleagă perspectiva persoanei respective, dacă cumva victima sau agresorul din cazul lui, în mod specific, nu vrea să participe în proces, sau da, poate să se vadă amândoi.
Este important să fie accesibilă medierea pentru copii, pentru că poate de multe ori un copil nu știe exact cum să se exprime direct celor care îi pot îndreptăți. Și la fel de important mi se pare ca mediatorii care s-ar ocupa de cazurile cu copii să fie pregătiți în mod să fie pregătiți de psihologi specializați pentru copii, pentru că de multe ori ei nu au resursele necesare să comunice în același fel și comunicarea non-verbală este poate chiar mai importantă decât cea verbală, mai ales în situațiile de acest gen. Da.
Dacă ați fi în postura să participați la mediere, la orice altă practică restaurativă, cum credeți că ar trebui medierea să aibă loc, din punctul vostru de vedere? La ce v-ați aștepta?
Eu cred că dacă aș fi în postura să particip la mediere, aș dori să se pună bazele unui dialog real și să se sublinieze problemele, dar și soluțiile. Pentru că de multe ori lumea găsește problemele, dar nu ajung să fixeze și concluziile. Tocmai de aceea cred că trebuie să ne uităm foarte atent și la efectele pe termen lung pe care le au conflictele.
Cred că justiția restaurativă este procesul care nu se axează neapărat pe căutarea de vinovați, ci mai degrabă aduce față în față cele două părți pentru a rezolva divergențele dintre ele prin mediere.
Justiția restaurativă își propune să repare și să mai dea o nouă șansă și cred că toată lumea ar trebui să știe că, indiferent de rolul jucat, dacă este de victimă sau de agresor, justiția restaurativă vine cu soluții pentru toate părțile implicate, care sunt și de prevenție și reparatorii și abordează problema din mai multe perspective.
Mulți tineri nu știu că aceasta este o variantă de rezolvare a conflictelor și nu își cunosc toate drepturile și responsabilitățile și sper că prin proiectul iRestore să ajungă informația la ei pentru a-și rezolva problemele.
Șansele pentru abuzator să se reeduce sunt mai mari prin justiția restaurativă, pentru că are șansa de a fi ascultat, de a fi înțeles și de a înțelege, de a conștientiza problema în sine. Orice problemă poate fi rezolvată dacă ai răbdare să asculți partea tuturor celor implicați.
Urmează prezentarea posterului creat de copii.
Da, mulțumesc, Cecilia, din nou. S-a tot menționat pe parcursul discuțiilor de ideea asta de a disemina informațiile cât mai mult în școli și așa, și chestia asta nu poate decât să ne bucure, pentru că e și unul dintre principalele noastre obiective, acela ca informații despre justiția restaurativă să ajungă la cât mai multe persoane. Și eu o să vă prezint un pic afișul, posterul la care am lucrat, iar după aceea colegele mele vor prezenta broșurile. Vedeți aici afișul deja prezentat, practic, pus aici pe ecran. Noi am încercat să facem un afiș care să fie cât mai ușor de înțeles, să aibă niște elemente care să exprime cumva exact ce înseamnă procesul ăsta de justiție restaurativă. Și puteți observa că sunt doi oameni puși practic față în față pe afiș, care reprezintă cele două părți care fac parte din procesul de mediere, adică făptuitorul și care sunt puse față în față, de fapt, în procesul de mediere, adică făptuitorul și victima. Și ne-am mai gândit că avem nevoie de câteva cuvinte cheie pe afiș și le puteți observa. Unul dintre ele, cel pus foarte sus, este curajul, pentru că ambele părți au nevoie de curaj pentru a face parte din acest proces. Este nevoie de curaj pentru a-ți practic spune povestea și pentru a sta față în față cu cealaltă persoană și a încerca să faceți acest schimb de informații. E nevoie de asemenea de empatie, ca să putem să înțelegem pe cei care trec prin astfel de procese și să înțelegem cât mai bine prin ce au trecut ei, ce sentimente au și cum putem să-i ajutăm. Dialogul care trebuie să fie între cele două părți pentru a putea comunica. Și vindecare, pentru că practic cu asta se ocupă cel mai mult justiția restaurativă, încearcă să vindece cele două părți după problemele care au fost între ele.
Vă voi arăta și varianta în engleză a posterului. Principalele cuvinte cheie fiind curajul, empatia, dialogul și vindecarea. Urmează un scurt filmuleț în care una dintre tinerele din grupul nostru a prezentat broșura realizată pentru copii.
Bună ziua, mă numesc Mărcica Nadejda și sunt voluntară în proiectul iRestore deja de 2 ani. Implicarea în acest proiect m-a ajutat și să descoper o altă latură a justiției și a rezolvării problemelor în general. Întâlnirile, acțiunile pe care le-am avut prin discuțiile pe care le-am avut cu colegii mei și cu alții specialiști ne-au ajutat să cunoaștem mai bine subiectul și să intrăm mai bine în el. Justiția restaurativă este o modalitate de rezolvare a problemelor, nu prin axându-se nu doar pe cine este vinovat și ce pedeapsă merită, dar prin rezolvarea problemei în sine. Aici noi, împreună cu colegii mei și toți împreună, am realizat o broșură pentru copii și cu informații mai simplificate despre justiția restaurativă, pentru care să fie utilă pentru vârsta lor. Prin întrebări foarte simple, cine este implicat în acest proces, care sunt persoanele, unde, cum și toate acestea, foarte simplu, foarte la subiect și accesibil copiilor și tuturor care nu au o bază în justiție restaurativă sau în termeni foarte științifici.
Aceasta este varianta în limba engleză a broșurii. Copiii au ales să formuleze întrebări după cum spunea și Nadia, astfel încât să se răspundă să se prezinte de ce este importantă justiția restaurativă, de ce sunt importante practicile restaurative, cine sunt părțile implicate, când se folosește justiția restaurativă, în ce situații, care sunt formele de justiție sau practici restaurative, unde au loc aceste întâlniri și de ce este important să apelăm la justiție restaurativă și la practicile restaurative. Un astfel de material a fost creat și pentru profesioniști. Voi alege de data aceasta să vă prezint doar broșura, pentru că tânăra care a prezentat materialul a vorbit destul de repede și probabil că va fi dificil pentru interpreții noștri de astăzi, pentru translatori, să transmită mesajele. Astfel, vă voi arăta direct broșura în limba engleză. Aceleași întrebări au fost utilizate și pentru profesioniști, astfel încât să înțeleagă care este sensul acestei justiții restaurative, care sunt beneficiile, avantajele utilizării ei, de asemenea, care sunt părțile implicate, victima, făptuitorul, facilitatorii, în cazul școlilor poate fi un consilier școlar, suporterii, persoanele de sprijin, când se poate utiliza abordarea restaurativă, în ce situații, cum, în ce forme, prin mediere, conferințe restaurative, cercuri restaurative și întâlniri la nivelul comunității. Și de asemenea, în ce situații se folosește? Se poate folosi ca parte a sistemului de justiție, în sistemul de protecție a copilului, în comunitate, în școli. De asemenea, copiii au vrut să evidențieze și relația dintre copii și adulții profesioniști, cum ar trebui să arate această interacțiune între ei. Materialele create de copii vor fi disponibile în limba engleză, în limba albaneză și în limba greacă, atât pe site-ul Fundației Terre, cât și pe Child Hub. Acestea sunt materialele create de tinerii din grupul nostru din România. Sperăm că v-au plăcut și așteptăm întrebările după pauză. Mulțumesc!
Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you to all of the members of the Romanian Child Advisory Board. It was very, very interesting to see these materials, as Mariama said. It has so many insights from the young people. It's really, really interesting to see what are your thoughts, how you have understood restorative justice, and how you see the application of that. Before we go to the break, I see that I just wanted to thank the presence of the national trainers who were responsible for the national online trainings in Albania, Greece, and Romania. I see that we have here with us today Cecilia Popa, Mariana Simini, and I'm not sure I saw your name, but just mention for the record, Katerina Sulu for Greece. So thank you very much to the three of you for your work on the national online trainings. We'll look forward to speak with you later today. So now I will propose that we have a short break, a 20 minutes break, and then we'll be back at 4:45 to talk about these awareness raising materials. We would like to hear from the audience. What are your thoughts about that? How you see, if you could reflect a bit of the situation of restorative justice in your countries and how these materials would impact that. And also for the Child Advisory Board members who are with us in this meeting, if at 4:45 you wish to share anything, to make any comments about the work you have done, we would be very, very happy to. Yes, so that is done. So thank you again, everyone. I'd like to acknowledge as well the work that was done by our communications officer, Maria Cidonelli. She is the one behind the first animation video animation that you saw on the presentation of the project results. We'll also have a final surprise for you in the end that she'll help us to develop. So thank you very much, Maria, for your help, for your support. Before we continue with our session, I'd like to highlight once again the work that is being done by Visuality and Maria Fouquier with the live drawing that she's doing of our session. So you're taking a look now at what she has done so far about the awareness raising campaigns. So whenever you want to take a look at what she's doing, you can click with the right button at her name and choose to spotlight her work to yourself, and you'll be able to see it in a big screen. So thank you everyone for being back with us. Now I will give the floor to my colleague from Terre des Hommes, Kristen Hope, our research and child participation advisor. So thank you very much, Kristen, for being with us today. We're very happy to have you moderating this next part of our conference. Kristen will engage with you from the audience to hear a bit about what you think about these awareness raising materials that were developed by our child advisory boards. And I would like to highlight once again to the child advisory board members that are with us today. If you want to make any comments, if you want to share your thoughts about the awareness raising materials, please let us know on the chat, and we will give you the floor. And also welcome Renate, I see that you've joined us. Thank you for being with us today. So please, Kristen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcos. Thank you so much for inviting me to share this with you today. It's such a fantastic moment. There's been so much work that's been done by all of you, all the partners involved in iRestore, and it's so fantastic to be able to come here and to listen and to see the work that's been created, particularly by the child and youth advisors. And I just really like to take this opportunity to honor that work and to commend them for everything that they've done, for all the time, for all the meetings, for all the energy. You know, some of them can't be with us right now because of other commitments, school, university, but also, you know, extracurricular activities. It's such a commitment being part of a child and youth advisory group. And I think I'd just really like to really just celebrate that, celebrate their commitment, celebrate their achievements, and also all of the supporting adults who enabled them to be involved with this project. One of the things that, just to kick off the discussion, one of the things that really struck me as I was listening to their presentations of their work was about they all see restorative justice as something that empowers them as individuals in their lives, and it empowers them to transform relationships. And as I was listening to the different ways that they spoke about it, whether it was the young man from Romania who was talking about restorative justice as courage, as demonstrating empathy, as dialogue, as healing, also the materials from the video from Albania, and also the materials from Greece and from all countries. It was just so clear that they were processing the information about restorative justice, the guidance that is actually quite, you know, adult centric, because it's generated by adults, it's often used by adults, and they were processing it and applying it to their own realities, and therefore they're starting to own it. And then in creating resources for others, they're actually becoming restorative justice peer educators. And I think this is very powerful, because this is when we start to look at how, you know, really how there's an intergenerational shift in process of restorative justice, that is something that can be owned and taken forward by children and young people alongside adults as well. So those are some of my reflections listening into what was shared by the children and young people. But I'd really like to open up the floor to our audience members. There are some prominent practitioners amongst us. I'd really like to you know, invite others to react to what was shared by the children and young people, or to also react to this concept of, you know, what can be next in terms of, you know, intergenerational, reinforcing this intergenerational work around restorative justice in Europe. So I'll pause there.
This is an invitation to everyone in the audience. If you want to share your comments, please let us know in the chat, and then we'll make you co-host so you can take the floor and speak your comments. Yes, I asked Tamas, please to make, yes, okay, Calliope is co-host already. So yes, so this is an invitation to our projects team and to everyone in the audience. If you want to share anything, to our CAB members, if you want to take the floor to share a bit more about your work with awareness raising, please go ahead. Thank you, Kristen.
Or maybe I can ask it the question in a different way. Very concretely, when we were listening to those fantastic presentations just before the break, I heard many adults saying, this is very inspiring. You know, this is very inspiring hearing these children and young people. So my question to adults as well is what has it inspired you to do? What has it inspired you to change? How do we move forward from here? How do we take this as part of a momentum moving forward? That's also a concrete question, if anyone would like to share their reflections on that. I see Rasim, Yoka.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think it was great to look a lot of presentation, and I think we find a new inspiration how to working with the children. I want just to mention, some years ago, we have been working in a school special for education for a restorative dialogue. Because in our view, it's better to use the dialogue than justice, but anyway, it's the same. It's the same practicing, the same model, it's the same theory. And in this sense, I look at a lot of innovative ideas and approach. Before we have been working and to consider the children as a beneficiaries. So it means to try to teach them, etc. But we find a lot of message through the presentation, through the products from Albanian, from Romanian, from Greece. And I think it's a great job done from all of the children involved, and also the teachers and the trainers and the others. For example, one of the message is how to introduce in very simple way the restorative justice, restorative dialogue, and how to create a model of communication among children and the parents, among children and the others, and how to learn in active way through doing, through participation, for getting solution or getting solving conflicts or problems in between the children in a peaceful way. And so it's so good to have a new perspective of the children, and special as Tali mentioned, it's very important to consider children as a partner. And in this frame of the project, we find a lot of message for this, and also how to create a new approach for empower role and the voice of the children, for not only for understanding but also for practicing of the peaceful and amicable solution for any kind of the small situation problems and so on. So in this sense, it's for me it's good to be part of this conference, and also to see a new approach for child involvement and children involvement and their contribution for a restorative practicing or restorative dialogue and restorative justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rasim, for those thoughtful words. I very much agree with this idea about, you know, this signaling a shift for children as partners. And I'd like to come back to that. But first I see some other colleagues who would like to contribute. So I see Alina, over to you.
Bună seara, sunt Alina, am fost facilitator în cadrul proiectului iRestore. Am lucrat cu grupul de tineri din România și a fost un proces foarte frumos să lucrăm împreună la elaborarea materialelor. În primul rând, am simțit faptul că noțiunea de justiție restaurativă a avut un impact puternic în viața copiilor. Faptul că au aflat că există așa ceva a fost de impact și și-au dorit prin materialele create să împartă aceste cunoștințe cu cei de vârsta lor, cu tinerii din generația lor. Așa că în momentul în care am conceput materialele, ne-am gândit să fie într-un limbaj cât mai prietenos și accesibil pentru copii și tineri. Pentru că, așa cum cei din CAB au simțit impact la aflarea noțiunii, la fel și cei care vor intra în contact cu materialele create de noi trebuie să simtă că ceva s-a schimbat. Pe de altă parte, a fost extrem de plăcut să lucrăm și la video, care este în totalitate concepția lor. A fost ideea lor să filmăm acele testimoniale în care să ne zicem părerea. Afișul, iarăși, este afișul și broșura. Au pornit de la cuvinte cheie sugerate de tineri și ei își doresc foarte mult ca acest proiect să continue și iRestore să fie doar începutul unui proces de schimbare. Mulțumesc foarte frumos!
Thank you very much, Alina, and it's lovely to see you again. But it resonates very strongly with me as well that iRestore is the beginning of a process of change, and I would also like to come back to that. But first, I would like to first hear from Emanuela. I see your hand, and afterwards Mariama as well. Thank you.
Kristen. No, I mean, I was also super inspired by what we saw before from the child advisory boards, because I remember the first phase on this project, we were working on the research report, and it was really quite difficult for us also to identify really materials, also to explain restorative justice to children, how to prepare them, how to explain how the process works, how to make sure that their voices are heard. And then while I was looking at what they presented, I thought like, wow, I mean, at the end, actually, we just had to ask them, and actually they had all the answers there. So, I mean, that was really beautiful because, I mean, some of them, they could really, I can really imagine some mediation services using them for, you know, making some flyers. So readapting some of the materials for explaining what restorative justice can be for others. So I think that was really relevant. And maybe also that was a bit what we were doing. We were searching for materials which actually are created by adults for explaining restorative justice to children. So again, maybe like that's something that we should rethink of. And I know already, like hopefully we will have the second phase and the continuation of this project. The idea was exactly that, to continue to work on this. I also wanted to share another thing. We have two, which I mentioned before to the other colleagues of iRestore, that we have two colleagues that lately worked and created something for children. They're adults in this case. And one, so both of them, there will be books that will be published next year. One is a children picture book on restorative justice, which is made by Lindsay Pointer from Vermont, from the US. And it's called Wally and Freya. So she really drew it. So she made drawings to explain restorative justice and to make a sort of, if I understood correctly, I didn't watch it, I didn't see it yet, it was a sort of fairy tale and a story for children. And the other one, actually, I have it here, and it's from Roberta Cifariello, who is a mediator and lawyer from Germany. It's not officially published yet, the book that I have, so it's only under review for now. But she actually wrote it on behalf of a child of 11 years old who is writing her own diary in which she explains the conflict of her parents, and who then they have a big fight and then they divorce, they go through the justice system. And then in this diary that this girl writes, she explains how she perceives the traditional justice system, where the parents were separated and they were fighting in each other. And then actually there is a moment when they finally encounter a mediator, and then the parents are sitting around the table and they can speak to each other in a normal way, and also her own voice is considered. So it's also another material that I think for practitioners who are working in this field, we should really keep an eye also of these creative minds that we have from the field that are also trying to adapt their experiences to children. So thanks, Krista.
Thank you, Emanuela. Both of those books sound fantastic. And yeah, thank you for sharing those insights with us. Mariama, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Kristen. Very glad to have you here, and that you're able to also, witness the conclusion of this. And I'm myself very not only inspired, but yeah, very happy to see how actually articulated all the ideas are, and what a richness of information there is in this. And I keep thinking that this can be really actually in each of the country can really be used in so many various ways that it's amazing. So really to mention, I remember the first month of the first meeting we had. It was like, how are we going to set up the child advisory board, and how are we going to reach out to children, and will there be interest or not? And 2 months later, I heard from the Romania colleague, oh, the children are very enthusiastic. They don't want to meet once in the 2 months. They want to meet every week. And so we were learning as we were going through the project how excited and interested and willing to participate the children were. And we ourselves were sometimes lacking the capacity to actually go and do all these meetings because we had the limitation, let's say, of the project. But the facilitator that we have here, and thank you so much, because you transmitted a lot of energy back to us, and we wish we could be there in the room with the children to listen to them. But there was, even though the COVID and the challenges, that the work continued to do. So that was really, really amazing. And when I see the material, and Kristen, when we are speaking, and I learned from you the fact that, we often talk about child-friendly material, child-friendly, and you say one day to me, but what we actually really should talk about is people-friendly material. And I think the jargon that we use that is so technocratic that we have maybe become in our work. And I'm thinking, this is material, this is people-friendly, this is just like ways to expressing ideas in very nice ways. And we don't need to, to call it child-friendly. Actually, this is very visually entertaining. I think most of us here relate to this material. So, and we can really use it a lot with the work that we do with the adults. So thank you very much. And this is a nice way to see how, indeed, by giving this voice to children and young people, we learn ourselves a lot from the process.
Thank you so much, Mariama, for sharing those valuable insights. Indeed, I think my background is a researcher, and I always think that a process of research is not just unidirectional. It's not just finding out something about someone out there. It's the best research is when it's also this transformative process for everyone involved, including the people who are the subjects of inquiry as much as the objects of inquiry. And I think that's why participatory research methods are so powerful, because yes, you're able to be transformed through that process of inquiry. And I think it's very interesting listening to many of the adults who've just commented about their own kind of realizations, and learnings being involved in this project as well. So that's an incredible amount of insight. I would also like to ask the question to some of the children, young people, but first I will pass the floor to Calliope because I see your hand. Over to you.
Well, thank you. Actually, this is what I would like to do myself, to
to address at least the children that are coming from the Greek CAB, but also this is an open question to every minor who is or who feels like a minor and wants to respond. So this is actually about Child Advisory Board being a learning process. So I would like to ask the children how they felt during this participation in this educational, let's say, series of activities. Was it similar? Was it any different compared to formal education? Did it help them more or less compared to it? Was it the same? So I really hope that they'd be interested in addressing the issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Calliope, for sharing that invitation. I see Lavinia. I'm not sure if Lavinia is Lavinia a member of the CABs? Oh.
I would like to speak, but the thing is that I don't know how to like raise the hand exactly.
Oh, that's fine. I see. Is that Fima, I mean?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, Fima. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. When it comes to formal education, I believe that we actually get to learn the theoretical aspect of the justice, and we don't really get to elaborate more on that. And it's actually like, you know, whatever we have in the syllabus, and that's why we get to learn, and we don't really get to learn further from that. Whereas by joining CAB, and I think we also got to do lots of practical activities, and in my opinion, when you do practical things, I think you get a better understanding of the topic. And when it came to justice, I think I got to learn more when I joined CAB, as we got to do practical stuff. I think in the presentation we have mentioned, we did graffiti, and we also encountered with many different people who were related to justice. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that intervention, Fima. I really, when I was listening to you, it just made me think about how what you were saying was really practical knowledge through the process, but also the meeting of people who are in the justice system. It was you know, not a theoretical study of some abstract idea, kind of like what Mariama was saying. It's sometimes when we talk about justice or ideas or philosophy, there's this kind of, you know, they're abstract, they're not real, they're not grounded, but through the process, the CAB process, they were, you know, they were practical, they were relevant to your lives, and it became real, and you can see how you made them real in the resources that you developed. So well done to you and all of your team. And I see Fotis with his or her hand up. I'm sorry. Over to you, Fotis, if you'd like to add something.
Great, thank you so much. So my name is Fotis, and I was a part of the CAB in Greece. I worked with Poppy and Panayot and Fima and many other people as part of the project. And what I mainly wanted to say is that I really loved that in the CAB, it truly was a child-led program, because that's not something you see quite often, even in school, but in general, like someone might use such phrasing for the sake of it, but when it actually comes to applying it, that's rarely ever the case. But what I found out actually joining, and it made quite the impression on me, is that we actually got the chance to really express ourselves, and not only to express ourselves, but what we said was kind of the main course of doing things in a way. Like as Panayota mentioned earlier, the list of the reasons for restorative justice was exactly what we said, not altered in the slightest. So I thought it was great that we actually got the chance to have this project, have our voices heard in a way, unfiltered, which you don't see in the common education system, I'd say. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Fotis, for sharing your experience. And I think, yeah, again, listening to that, it seems that there's so much learning that's come out of this whole project. There's learning about restorative justice as an idea, as a practice, as a way of transforming relationships. But there's also so much learning about child participation and making that real. Can I ask you maybe, maybe ask a question as well to Fotis and to Fima. How do you see this, you know, participatory work with children and young people being taken forward? You know, what what are the sorts of things that need to change so that children and young people are given more opportunities to be considered as agents of change and not just as passive, people who receive services, but as part of change. I'd be really keen to hear your thoughts, Otis and Fima, and then anyone else who wants to react as well afterwards.
What I would say mainly is that people need to have access to the same access to information. For example, before joining the CAB and before we had this presentation by tourism in our school, I had no idea where restorative justice was, if I'm being honest. It's opportunities like that truly open your eyes in a way and broaden your horizons, because if we keep this kind of blinkered mindset where we don't really know what's going on around us, the issues we'll see in the justice system and everything, we're simply left in the dark and we don't have this motivation to actually try and change things. But I would say first step in making sure that people are actually informed would be, for example, the graffiti work we did in our school or any other way of informing people. And it doesn't have to be some long essay that many people will not bother even reading, but just something that's really gonna get to people. Just like in our graffiti, we used messages that would be understood by younger kids and older kids alike. I think it's just finding a method of communication that reaches to all the target population you want to reach, and just showing them how real this is, how it's not just some textbook theory they're never going to use again. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. There's a comment from another member of the Greek CAB in the chat box that I'd like to read out now as well, and of course in inviting others to react afterwards. But this is from Baran Mohammadi, who says, quote, "I currently cannot speak, so I will type. My name is Baran. I'm Iranian. I'm a member of the Greek CAB. The educational aspect of CAB has helped me develop my emotional intelligence as well as my knowledge of the subject. Whereas in the traditional education system, all we learn to do is memorize information for an exam. We are also in control of our education, which was integral, as contrary to iRestore, the traditional school system does not necessarily value individuality." That's very powerful. Baran, thank you so much for sharing that insight. And again, I would invite others to react about, what we can, moving forward. And again, there is this intention that there will be continuation either of iRestore in another format, but also as practitioners, we will continue trying to reinforce child participation in justice work, in child protection work, in the social field. And empowering children as agents of change. So I would also love to hear from any other reflections as well about what kind of critical things can we be doing to push participatory work forward and to make sure that children and young people have voices, and that those voices are taken seriously. I do a lot of work with children and young people in advocacy, and I think one of the challenges that I hear all the time is that children and young people may be given, space to speak, but their views are not considered and not taken seriously by adults. And so that is also something that is a persistent challenge. And I'd be happy to hear any reflections on that as well. Sylvia, I see your hand. Please, the floor is yours.
Yes. Hi, Kristen. Nice to see you, first of all. Good afternoon, everybody. So answering to your question now, to the last question, I'm also struck by this, the ability with which these children and young people manage to really extract some key words, some key concept that we take so long to identify about restorative justice, about very complex concepts that we say. You said, and the way I'm also working a lot as you all on research and training. So the way I really, I wish, at least in an ideal world, in ideal continuation of projects we are working at the moment now, I would see these children and these young people, first of all, for example, being code trainers, for example, so with adults to really be but not the accompanying person to the trainer, but the actual trainers themselves. So of course they need to be also mentored and to be themselves trained on how to do that. Of course, not just left to be given the tools as we said, but I think most of these young people that I heard speaking and or of whom I saw what they realized, they already have the knowledge and the language and the emotional skills and abilities, and then that they need to do that. So not just to peer-to-peer education, which also I think is extremely important, but reversing this, the relationship between adults and children, because nobody who said that we know. I mean, honestly, that's another myth. So adults have a lot to learn from children who have an actual and concrete experience on what they speak about. Maybe another critical point that I would put on the table, that I would I don't know, encourage in a future work, is to have this kind of participatory bodies, or the same children and now are trained in the CAPS to go and, for example, speak in prison to children, for example, young people in institutions or in contexts where are particularly difficult to be reached, and so where the lack of information about the justice and what justice means and what their rights are is particularly complex and more complex than the average population that we are used to. So yeah, just we could continue, but I'll leave it to you, Kristen. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. I love this idea of the cascading, and also the inversing the roles between student and teacher, and actually again, how can we as adults learn? We have a lot to learn from children. That's what I retain, and also then this idea of inclusivity, trying to to engage with children who are often not afforded the possibilities of engagement because they're not in school, or because they are, from marginalized groups. Actually, that is the topic that we will discuss in the upcoming World Congress, which I will do a plug for as soon as we've heard from Annemieke. So Annemieke, over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, much interesting ideas and things are shared. In the Netherlands, when we were working with CAPS, we also sometimes face difficulties in trying to find groups, or to make a group and then to build trust. You have to have a really good plan and program to be really working consistently, and then also to get their involvement and to get them really in this stage, as some of the youngsters here, that they can really show what they have in themselves. There's so much, but you need to have a good and solid preparation for that. And currently I'm involved in Amsterdam in a what we call public speaking project, where we try to work with young people who are from marginalized groups to work in 6 weeks with a public speaker trainer, but also by involving a rapper and, making a really interesting program that in the end, they are themselves actually the ones who share their, what they have in them. So, what I would like to emphasize is that you need to build, and that also the program itself should be really well thought of, and then I think it gives the results that we want to have. So it's both ways. It's preparing it well, it's informing them well, and then they can really be of use, because I also got totally amazed about their ideas and possibilities, and also in restorative justice, what Emanuela said, we will really it will improve our materials, and that's really worthwhile.
Thank you so much, Anamika, and thank you to you and Emanuela for the partnership as well. And it's alongside the other partners. And it's just, you know, reflecting on your comment about difficult for building trust. I mean, that's difficult in a normal setting anyways, but particularly in a COVID setting, when also our normal human cues and our normal ways of being are also no longer available to us. You know, so often, you know, our rituals of building trust would be maybe breaking bread together, having a meal together, for example. You know, when all of a sudden none of these things are available, we're also left to, you know, to try to, you know, build trust in a digital environment, which, you know, is challenging. And then through that process also it's a learning journey. So I think like many of you, I've spent, you know, most of the past 2 years on Zoom, and when I've been you know, thinking about how to do better in building trust in the Zoom environment. Also, you know, I was, you know, at the beginning kind of like, oh, what should I be doing? And then I said, okay, actually, I should be maybe asking the children and young people what they would be doing, you know, because actually this is an environment in, you know, in some way, you know, there's with the generational divides in, you know, children and young people are, some of them are digital natives in a way that we're not. Obviously, we can't over romanticize the idea of digital natives because we know that there's a digital divide and we know that many people don't have access to the digital environment. But as soon as I started asking, okay, what can we be doing? You know, and they were, oh, well, there's these really cool apps and we can do this and there's like a drawing thing. And all of a sudden there was all of these ideas. And it's sometimes it's that classic thing of, you know, we rack our brains for questions that we, you know, but it sometimes is having that intention of asking, you know, for advice again from children and young people we're working with, because they can guide us as well. And so that's been a part of my learning in doing participatory work during the pandemic. And I hope that these are things that we take forward as we try to take these forward. I would, you know, in terms of time, I know that we need to be wrapping up, but I did see Calliope's hand. Calliope, did you want to have any concluding, you know, remarks before we wrap up today? Maybe briefly?
Yeah, just a minute. I would like to comment how proud I am and how honored I am to have been a facilitator in the Child Advisory Board, and I would like to do so addressing my CAB members particularly, because I have had the great opportunity to learn from them. I think more than I have been able to guide them in learning themselves. And I would also like to underline the fact that one of the major reasons why we are here with them today is because they are able and they are so impactful in processing notions, ideas, practices that we adults have struggled so much in learning and unlearning in order to comprehend. And they have been so receptive and so active and so dynamic in not only understanding the notions that we've been through, but embracing them and advocating for them in an amazing way. So I would really like to thank them for giving me the opportunity to be a witness of it all.
Thank you for sharing that personal reflection about your involvement. And I think that you know, that's a lovely way to bring it to an end, you know, on a note of mutual appreciation for the journey that so many of us are, you know, involved in this project, or so many of you involved in this project have been on over the past few years. And I think what's important to emphasize is that obviously this journey does not end today. This is a milestone, you know, maybe a moment of you know, with what, you know, one phase closing and others opening. We do have another milestone moment coming up, as I'm sure many of you know, which is the World Congress on Justice with Children, deliberately designed based on children's advice to us from the previous World Congress in 2018, when they said, the Child and Youth Advisors said, no, I mean, you're talking about justice for children. We want to have justice with children. So, you know, for this year, we took up the challenge and we tried to, we've been working with an International Child and Youth Advisory Group So the World Congress is coming up not next week, but the following week. The program is online. Please, we invite everyone to register. There will be children and young people's participation is integral to many different segments. Also, they have designed some segments themselves. So there's a segment on the Monday, which is a youth-led session on youth experiences of discrimination in justice systems, but also ways of transforming discrimination. And then also on the Friday, there's a youth-led session on knowing your rights and claiming your rights and joining a movement to be part of transforming justice for children. So and then there's many other opportunities. And actually, obviously, there's the iRestore event on the Wednesday, and I know that will also integrate an element of participation. And so all of this to say that you know, it's an ongoing journey, but I think that my overall feeling of when we do this participatory work with children, there's many moments where sometimes it comes to adults having the courage to step back so that children can step forward. And that's really the, I hear that firmly in the children. So hopefully for the next conference, the next moderator will be one of the brilliant CAB members who are here today. And so that I can sit back and listen instead of moderating. And I really welcome that. And so I leave that as the challenge for the next phase of work. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Kristen, for your help today, for your moderation. So it's nice to hear from you. And thank you very much to our Child Advisory Board members. Thank you everyone for being with us so far throughout the day. And now I would like to give the floor to Emanuela Biffi, our partner from the European Forum for Restorative Justice, for the next part, the almost closing part of our day. So please, Emanuela, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Marcos. Actually, I have quite a tough time here, as you can see, tough task list, because I'm, this will be the last session. So I really hope that you are still awake. That's the first reason. But the second one also is that I'm going to present another advisory group made by Attitudes, which is still really cool and really good. But I mean, coming after the Child Advisory Board, I mean, I think this was a bit, we didn't foresee this thing in the program actually. But we have 7 members in the Restorative Justice Advisory Group. And I remember when we were in Budapest in September 2019, and we really sat with the project partners thinking like, who do we want in this group? And then we come back to it, the best ones in Europe. So we are really happy that some of you are here today. And thanks also for all the work that you have been doing throughout the project. For those that don't know maybe what the Restorative Justice Advisory Group did for us, first of all, they gave really an immense feedback in the beginning, in the first phase of the project, when we were really busy with the research, giving feedback on the report itself, but also in the methodology, advising on new materials, new practices, giving new contacts. So this was super, super useful. Some of them, they were also involved in the training, or at least giving us feedback on the training program, and then also in some of the advocacy events that we organized. So thanks a lot for that. So out of these 7, I will start with the 2 that are not here today, just to thank Lynn Gassmans and V. Van Severen, who are 2 mediators and trainers from Belgium, that have been really useful actually for us, because they were actually bringing the practice perspective. So they are really restorative justice practitioners working with children, so that they could also advise us on what practices fits better. So for example, using images, using toys, using different ways for working with children. And I just want to also make a bit of advertisement here, because for those of you who don't have the chance to meet them today, if you want, next week, they will be delivering a training on the 10 and 12 of November. I'm adding the link here on the website, because they are currently actually designing some more activities for delivering training on restorative justice with children. So if you are willing to join us, please let us know and you can register there. Now I'm going to give the floor maximum 2 minutes, so we really have a reduced time at the end, to the Restorative Justice Advisory Group members who are here today. And to all of them, actually, I will ask to share a key message, or one or more, or two maximum key messages on your experience in the project, but actually more in general, also what you think about the use of restorative justice with children, and also what you heard today. So it can be really like a key closing message which can come from each of you. I will give the floor first to Silviu Dumitru, who is the Executive Director of the Criminal Justice Reform Foundation in Romania, so who has been involved in one of the country's partners in this project. Silviu.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and of course for the opportunity to be involved with this project. I think it's always good to see so passionate people involved in promoting restorative justice, especially in Romania, where we don't really have a restorative justice culture, and you know, the public opinion and the professionals are more oriented towards a more punitive justice system. But this project was especially good, and I am pleased to have been involved with it, because it really promoted the ideas of the restorative justice and raised awareness of professionals, and facilitated links between different professionals. And also what's key point is the involvement of the children, who were very enthusiastic about the idea of this restorative justice, and who really understood the benefits that this approach can have for them and for the community. So I think this was a really good project, especially here in Romania, and I hope we can build further on this experience, and go on with the advocacy and education activities, because these are very much needed in Romania to really change the justice system. We need to change the public opinion, to change the views of the professionals who are drafting the laws, of the decision makers who are adopting these laws. So what can I say? It's been a real pleasure to be and to see such a project being developed and carried out in Romania, and of course meeting professionals from other countries and their experience. It's always good, and it's helping this change project, this change process in our country and also in others. So thank you for the opportunity to be involved with this initiative.
Thanks, Silviu. What I didn't mention before, actually, is that some of the Restorative Justice Advisory Group members are old friends of the European Forum for Restorative Justice. But thanks to the iRestore project, we managed to make some new contacts, and actually Silviu is one of them. So I'm really grateful that we had this opportunity to meet each other, even if never in person, unfortunately. And also another thing that I wanted to add about the Romanian experience, I remember when we launched the national trainings, we couldn't actually have enough space for all the participants, because it was really well accepted. So it's for sure a country where we hope that we can work further also in the future. So thanks, Silviu, for that.
No, thank you. Thanks.
I'm giving the floor then to Rasim Gioca, who is Executive Director of the Foundation for Mediation and Conflict Resolution in Albania, who is actually one of the old friends of the forum and one of the founders. So we know each other quite well since quite some years. Rasim, so what is your key message? What are your last words on this project?
You are muted.
Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you, Emanuela. I'm sorry for, but it has been a great pleasure for me and also honor to be part of the advisory group. And but of course, we have been a little bit in the distance in the sense of the role of the child advisory group or advisory board, because also the approach of the project for me had been much more focused in the children role, and it is a good. But anyway, we have been also sharing a lot of information, but not to repeat that I expressed before, I want to mention as a key message, special in a country level or country context. I think, you know, for some very well development for restorative justice for juveniles and for children in Albania, after approved of the code, penal code for children, and the restorative justice and the restorative practicing is part of the code. And so to put in this context, we find a lot of lesson learning and special new approach to working not in restorative justice for children, but with children. So it means to give more space, more role for children to be more active participation, and also to contribute and to consider them as a strong points and strong voice for different perspective of restorative justice, for introduction, for implementation, and also for more good result in achievement. We have some problems and some paradox because we have very good legislation in very high level standards, but the question of the implementation is big issues. And through this project, we learn a lot of special how to influence also at the practitioners, at stakeholders and special justice professionals like prosecutors, judges, and probationer officer, etc., for consider a role of children in the process of restorative justice implementation. In this sense, I think I consider a strong step or strong tools for further development of restorative approach and restorative justice in our society. Thank you, Emanuela.
Thanks, Rasim. Also something that maybe you didn't mention now, but also I know that you're working a lot also to make Tirana a restorative city, which for those who are not familiar with that, it means that there is really a cooperation from different organizations, schools.
Sorry for it, but if it's needed, I can spend only 30 seconds or 1 minute, because we are in an ongoing process for a restorative city, and the main focus now is to include special focus in the children and juveniles in conflict or in contact with the law, close to the let's say municipality.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I cannot mute Luminita. Okay, yeah.
So in this sense, we are in a new step. And I find a lot of messages that, as I mentioned before, from implementation of the project iRestore to consider and also to have a follow-up through a restorative city in Tirana. Thank you, Emanuela. Sorry for.
Thanks, Rasim. No, I think it's nice because then this means that, you know, cooperation happens between different organizations, different institutions, and that's for sure relevant for children and also for citizens of the community. So thanks for that. Thanks for sharing. I'm giving the floor to Marce Berger who is a legal advisor on youth rights from Defense for Children International in the Netherlands.
Well, thank you, Emanuela. And it was very interesting and good afternoon to see how many children in all kind of different places and countries have been working on the topic of restorative justice was very good to see. And it made me realize that it's so important that children learn and work with restorative justice at a very young age, that you don't start thinking about it when you've had many conflicts or many problems in your life, but that you learn it at school or at iRestore or wherever it's possible, that all children get familiar with it. So that was already a very good insight of this project. And well, we were of course asked, is there any key message, or do you see anything that's that you want to share? And while working on restorative justice and child victims, I've come to realize that there are many children, at least in the Netherlands, who are victim of crimes they're a bit ashamed of, or they're scared that it might happen again, and they don't go to the police. Maybe it can be because they've been fighting and they are afraid to be victim again if they go to the police, or they've done something that they're really ashamed of, or they don't want to involve their people who are family of them, and they don't want them to be punished. So there could be all kind of reasons why children don't talk about what happens to them, well, child victims today. And in these cases, I think it's very difficult to see, well, how can we make restorative justice also available for them? But also children who do go to the police, they get, especially child victims, they don't get referred so much to restorative justice. It's very ad hoc, and it's not common enough, at least. And when they are referred, then I think Tailor was very inspiring, telling that adult manipulation is of course a risk. And I see that too, that often adults, in case of child victims, can already decide, well, it's not good for you, or they want to protect them, whether they do or do not meet their perpetrator or offender. So I think it's very good to realize that if children do participate, then there are some risks that we really have to be aware of. And the other one Tailor mentioned was pressure to participate. Is also, I think, very good to realize that that's happening. And I think in the Netherlands we can be much more aware of that. I think a lot of people are working with children, but there's not really specialization. Also not among mediators. So I think it's good to have this awareness. So for me, that's something I take from this afternoon with me to talk about more with people in restorative justice. And well, we were also asked, is there any solution? And I think the solution is a very broad goal. I think we all should see, well, how can we get restorative justice to the core of the youth justice systems? At least in Europe, that's worldwide, there's also people working hard at it. And then it's really needed, especially in the Netherlands, that there's more restorative justice services, more tailor-made for children, more involving their network. We need to know what they need. And it should also be good. We've been working also with Terre in focus. That's about the individual assessment, and child victims get more tailor-made treatment. It would also be good that restorative justice is part of the conversation of what children need. So I think these kind of challenges, child-specific methods, trainings, professionals, and children who are empowered and not only protected, that these things are many new projects worth. So I hope iRestore will continue. And I heard that there might be a chance. So thank you for now.
Thanks, Marce. I really appreciate also your journey that you made from the child justice until restorative justice. I know it's some years that you're working also in the restorative justice field, but you came from this other perspective. So thanks also for sharing your experience throughout the project on that. So we have two more, and to both of them, actually, I ask an additional question. Sorry, Luminita, can you... Can someone mute Luminita because I'm not able to do that?
Sure.
Thanks. So yeah, we have two more members. Fine. I think she disappeared now though. So we have two more members of the advisory group that I want to give the floor. And actually to both of them, I also asked if they could come back to a question that we received today from Vanessa Sedletsky. We didn't forget about that. Who was wondering about the role of lawyers, their own interests. And actually, maybe I wouldn't ask them so much to reflect only on lawyers, but in general on criminal justice professionals and what is their resistance maybe towards restorative justice, what would be their interest or disinterest in referring cases to restorative justice. I give the floor first to Silvia Randazzo, who is a child justice expert and is also a colleague at the European Forum for Restorative Justice and at KU Leuven Institute of Criminology in Belgium. Maybe you can refer to one of the projects, or actually two projects you're working on.
Yeah, thank you, Emanuela. Well, indeed, this afternoon was so rich that I'm quite also overwhelmed by all the messages that received from the children and young people that finally, after these projects, 2 years or more, then myself as a researcher, my project coordinator or grant writer, you feel a bit detached, but then finally you can see that what you've been talking about, it works. The methods of child participation really works. So that's great to see. Going to your specific question about legal professionals, indeed, I can refer to the two projects. One is Rejustice, where the European Forum for Restorative Justice is partner with KU Leuven. We are working on producing and delivering training on restorative justice for judges and public prosecutors in Italy, Spain, and Greece, while the other one is also with the legal professionals, but with lawyers and with Terre. It's a project, the Terre project on legal aid, legal assistance with children. So it's not specifically on restorative justice, but definitely restorative justice to us is a component that needs to be part of any training that should be provided to lawyers and legal professionals that work with children. If there is an interest, I can talk about judges, especially in public prosecutors that we approached, and now it's been an experience of a couple of years where we work closely with the magistrates from these countries and also from other countries in Europe, where we collaborated in the training needs assessment phase and in the development of the training material. And the answer, I think, it's definitely yes. There is a strong interest. I think what I learned, I think, from my work in this field with these categories of professionals is that, as also some children mentioned, often they just don't know about restorative justice. So if there is some resistance or reluctance to listen more carefully about restorative justice, because they don't know exactly what it consists of. So, and at the moment they understand that restorative justice practices actually work, that they have an impact on the victims, on the offenders, and an overall community, then, and also they can have an impact on more practically on their the workload or the length of the proceedings, or also avoiding a big part of that. They definitely are open to work with restorative justice professionals and to learn more, and then to become themselves educators of other colleagues and professionals from the same categories or others. And now that's also Kristen was asking earlier about how could we see this child participation element, go forward. In also another ideal scenario would be that children and young people as well can interact with these categories as judges and public prosecutors and lawyers that are often quite far, definitely we can say there are in our imaginary world, because then they are very normal people and very open to learn as all the others, but they are seen as a bit far because they represent the justice system. So we could, I believe that maybe in the future projects, in future work with based on what we're already building with children and young people involved now, we could kind of make this distance, reduce this distance, and bring together all different categories of professionals, including children and young people that can, share all these very powerful but very basic understanding of restorative justice, and very clear, and that many very highly educated professionals still don't know, because they are simply have not been exposed to that. So I think also maybe for a third phase of iRestore 3, we can envisage some further categories of professionals, because last point, and I didn't say that, but they are key in the referral process. Of course, judges and public prosecutors, depending on the system, but they are the key gateway to refer a case to restorative justice. Lawyers are same level of key role they play in advising the child to, of course, to their rights, but also to their options that they have in front of them, including restorative justice, both for child victims and child offenders. I'll stop there, Manuel.
Thanks, Silvia. And actually, while you were talking before, I also mentioned on the chat that because actually that's maybe the main issue that we have of actually improving the impact and the social impact of restorative justice, not only in individual encounters, but also in societies and in communities. So for those who are interested, tomorrow actually we will have a day with researchers and policymakers exactly on this topic. So you are more than invited to join us if you have your day still free. And last but not least, I will give the floor to Renate Winter, who is an Austrian judge, but also a member of the Committee on the Rights to the Child. So Renate, the same question for you, like if you can share a key message for everyone, but also if you can reflect on the role of criminal justice and legal professionals.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I'm not so sure that you would be happy with what I have to tell. I'm always the black sheep in each and every event, because the justice system and the judges are a little bit different. And we have heard a lot of learning one from another. And that might be an interesting concept, but I do not see that, or I could not see very much that a judge would accept to be able to learn in his or her justice system from a child, neither for an adult who is not from a legal profession. So there already we have a problem. The second one, concerning now the lawyers. If the lawyers can help in the restorative justice, indeed they can, but only if they are interested in having a quick and good solution and not to earn a lot of money. If you have a country where you have specially trained lawyers for children, for defending children, then you can deal with them. Because if they come for, they can ask for restorative justice according to the law, and they can submit already ideas and possibilities for diversion and so on, which saves a lot of time and effort for the justice system. But if they are interested in earning some money, they wouldn't do that. So it depends on about what lawyer you are going to speak, a professional and specialized one or another one. And the same goes for the judges. There are two groups of judges with which you can really discuss about restorative justice. These are the family court judges and the juvenile judges. And both of them in most countries are informed about restorative justice. And you can discuss with them. With all the others, you cannot, because there are several reasons. First of all, speaking now not about Europe, but about globally. I do not know if this is of interest for you. Globally, the majority, the huge majority of countries are repressive. Punishment is a prerogative, and punishment is something that gives you power, and you do not want to give away your power. It is the parents who want to punish. It's the school who wants to punish. It's the employer who wants to punish. It's the state who wants to punish. If a judge mirroring the situation in which he or she lives is not going for punishment, then this person will have a very hard time. That is one. The second one is religion. Quite a lot of religions say that forgiving is quite something important. But before you have to do this, and that. And afterwards, your punishment would be maybe more easy, but there will be punishment. So there is no face-to-face, no eye-to-eye discussion about anything else but punishment. That is another issue, especially for countries where religion has a huge role to play. And finally, it's the economy. In countries like in the Netherlands that are far, far advanced on this topic, or Austria, which is far, far advanced as well, my own country, the issue is not that the juvenile judge would not know about restorative justice, about diversion possibilities. It's not that the judge would not like to do that, but he can do it only if the alternatives that he wants to have are available. And in quite a lot of countries, these alternatives are not available. This, for instance, is the reason why it doesn't work in Romania. I have been working in Romania, as I have been also working in Albania. The point is, if you want to go for community service and there is no system for community service, a judge will not go for community service knowing that he gives an order that cannot be fulfilled. If a judge wants to go for mediation and there is no trained mediator available, and this trained mediator is not there for free, the judge will not go for it because he knows that his order will not be fulfilled. And the judge is not an idiot. He's not going to do something knowing that it will not be able to be implemented. That is the biggest problem. And in all countries worldwide, as far as I know, finance is never interested in the justice system. The Ministry of Justice, which is responsible for the money for the justice system in most countries, has the least of all the budgets worldwide. And which means that the justice system is not interested in doing something that would cost extra. So if you put all that together, you know why the judges will not use or are not inclined to use restorative justice methodology or possibilities, because they do not have the means to do it. In countries where there are the means, like for instance in New Zealand, there it works. And the judges in New Zealand are not that different from the judges, let's say, in Austria. The point is that the judges in New Zealand have the economic possibilities and the others don't. So that, I hope, is some kind of explanation. Nevertheless, I know that it's not nice to hear. but if I can give an advice, especially concerning judges, please do not tell them that they have to learn from children. Don't. They will block. Please tell them that they should teach the children in schools, go to schools, give lectures, whatever, so that the children do know their rights. I repeat, do know their rights and can ask for their rights. That's the language a judge will understand. Yeah. So the point is, give the education to the children. Let the children, with the help of adults or without help of adults, go for looking, do the law allow me to go for restorative justice? Yes, the law does. So I'm asking for it. That would be a possibility. Yeah. And the very first thing that I have heard in, I do not know how many countries, I, as a judge, will never, never touch restorative justice if it is not expressly in the law, including with guidelines how to handle it. If this is not available, forget me. So I hope I did not destroy the whole Congress now, your whole day, with what I have said, because I would like to say at the end of it, if I am allowed, as a judge, I can confirm that restorative justice is by far more beneficial for victims and perpetrators alike, as it gives responsibility back to those involved in the events, and thus enable the victims to find back their dignity and the perpetrators to find back their responsibility. And this is the main thing that will help to solve a problem for good. COVID has taught us to have to reach out online. This is why iRestorative Justice is so important. Online for a far bigger audience, including especially children. And it is now of virtual importance to convince the stakeholders that the justice system has to make better use of restorative justice in the interest of justice. Yeah.
Thanks, Renate.
Not only children, justice. Thank you.
Thanks, Renate. I think it's always really useful to hear also your criticisms, obviously, but also the fact that you are coming from the position that you have. I think it's really relevant. And I know that you're also really a great advocate of restorative justice. So I'm really grateful for that, and also for all your advice throughout the project. I'm really concerned about the time, because actually we are beyond 6. So for those that really have to leave, obviously you're more than allowed to leave the room. But if you have the patience to stay maybe 10 more minutes with us, we will give the floor now to the Executive Director of the European Forum for Restorative Justice, Edith Terre. And from my side, I just want to say thanks again once more to all of you, to all what I heard today and also throughout the project. For me, it had been a really beautiful journey, these 2 years together. And I want to come back also to this slogan that one of the CABs mentioned before, iRestore relationships, because I really had the impression that this is also what happened throughout this project. We had relationships within the CABs, within the advisory group, research advisory group, within the partnership. And I'm really pretty sure that this will continue also in future projects. Edith, I'll give you the floor. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Emmanuel, and thanks to all of you for allowing me to close this conference. And I think not only the conference, but the whole project really worth a big applause. And we are really happy that we could take part in this. So my first thanks goes to Terre des hommes and especially to Mariama, who reached out to us probably 3 years ago to think together about the potentials of restorative justice for children. And this project was our first more established collaboration that I think we are really happy for. And we see the commitment of Terre des Hommes in engaging in this topic. And we also learned a lot how to involve children, how to work with children, and how you organize your work. I think it's obvious at the end of this conference that the main highlight of this project was the involvement of children. And I think beyond that, of course, this project produced, I would say, the usual stuff. Such projects produce research reports, trainings, awareness raising events, and materials. But really, I think the uniqueness is that was highlighted today in most of the presentations is that we could really do what we teach actually, or what we preach, to really involve the people, the children who are affected and who are the stakeholders and especially the experts in this topic, and involving them in a meaningful way and involving them in a way that they could contribute to the content and the outcome of the project. I know that the whole pandemic made it super difficult for the whole project, but I think all of you showed a lot of creativity to solve the issues and go on with the plan. And I think the results speak for themselves. What I really regret that we really looked forward to welcome all of the members of the Child Advisory Boards on a study visit in Belgium and Netherlands, and I'm really sorry as a host that it couldn't happen, but I really hope that there will be some way to make this happen for you in the future in a way. I think, and also a bit inspired by Renata's last input, I think it's really important that we work at the European Forum to create access to restorative justice. And as Renata said, it has different elements because we have to have some kind of legal framework in most of the countries. We need professionals with the right attitudes. We need available services, and also services that are actually trained to do a high quality practice. And in this framework, it's important that we have services that are aware of the needs of the children, that have the tools to work with children, or even we have children who work as mediators or peer mediators on a well-trained basis. And most of all, I think we need awareness. And I think this project achieved a lot on that level to create awareness on restorative justice. And I was really, really happy to see the outcomes of the Child Advisory Boards, the presentation of the different products. And I started just to put down some words that came to my mind during those presentations. And I ended up with a lot of words with C. So I find these creative and committed, colorful, clever, cool, children-made and child-friendly. And maybe you have other C words you can come up with, but thanks a lot for the cups, for these wonderful products. And I hope that at the European Forum, we can also help to disseminate these and to reach out to many children. Just a little bit on the continuation of the project. So Marcos mentioned already that the e-learning developed in this project is available on the Child Hub Academy. That's accessible to all of you, and I think it's a product that can stay for professionals for a long time. Thanks for my colleagues Emmanuel and Restorative Justice Netherlands for developing it. There is also a new project planned, iRestore 2, with this very creative name, but I think it explains what it wants to achieve. We don't have information on the funding yet, but what is interesting that we try to put more emphasis in this new project on the aspect of accessibility, access to restorative justice, It's also designed in a way that countries would twinning and work more closely with each other. There is more focus on awareness raising. There is the plan to create a media toolkit, for example. This new project would also involve more the families and the schools as important environment for children, and also it plans to develop tools for restorative justice practitioners, which was also said today many times that it's a bit lacking on the field. So these are the things we would like to develop in this next project, and we hope that it will get funded. I'm not sure I'm the one who should thank people, but I really would like to express my gratitude and thanks to everybody who was involved in this project. First of all, to Terre Hungary for coordinating the project, and for Terre Albania, Romania, and Greece for their excellent local work in the countries. Also, I think what the Child Advisory Board members did is amazing and really inspired us. So thanks a lot, guys and boys, and thanks a lot for being so open to these adults talking to you about something. What I find inspiring as an adult, that as adults we still can inspire children to do something that we find important, and which sometimes I feel goes a little bit against the flow. And I think there is the hope that it's spreading the voice on this concept of justice, spreading the voice over what is possible in terms of a conflict. We can really overcome this dominance of a punitive approach and the dominance of this adversarial system, how the justice system is made today. So I think all what you did and shared with us gives a lot of hope for the future. I would like also thank the speakers of today's event, especially for Taligal for her keynote speech, and all the facilitators, moderators, and especially personally to Mariama to establish this cooperation, for Marcos for the coordination, and for my colleague Emanuela Bifi, who worked on this project on behalf of the European Forum. I give the word for Marcos for a last surprise to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Yes, as Mariama said in the chat, thank you to the interpreters as well. You have helped us not only today, but in other events of iRestore. Thank you to the whole team. Thank you, Emanuela, Nemiki. Thank you, Nareda, Panachota, Laura. Thank you to the colleagues that worked with us in the beginning of the project, Rodica and Dumitrita that supported us in Romania, also to Dimitra that helped us in Greece a bit earlier in the project. And without further ado, I will leave you with a closing message from our Child Advisory Board members.
Our project was a wonderful experience where I got to follow my passion for justice in both a practical and theoretical manner. I got to understand the difference between retribution and restoration, and why the latter is so important in cases involving minors. Also, I had the opportunity to educate myself and help in educating others about the benefits of restorative practices.
Marr pjesë në një projekt të tillë dhe ushtrova nga dëshira për të mësuar dhe ndërvepruar me moshatarët e mi. Në këtë projekt ne zhvilluam aftësi për të edukuar moshatarët tanë duke përdorur praktika restauruese. Ne mund të zvogëlojmë problematikat e konfliktet e jetës sonë.
We discussed how in restorative justice it gives the offender a chance to rehabilitate themselves and to get rehabilitated in order to not only improve quality of life for themselves, but to improve the safety of the people around them and be a functioning member of society.
When someone thinks of like the justice and the criminal system, just like myself before this project, I just knew it to be as this courtroom with these like fancy lawyers, pretty scary lawyers, the judges, and kind of no one really being able to really kind of communicate or talk about what actually happened. but this project helped me see that there are other alternatives that are already being implemented and could be implemented on a much wider scale. For example, restorative justice, where it allows for closure between the victim and the offender, and it takes into the account the actual human side of a crime, because that's not accounted for in typical courts.
The victim and offender get treated very differently because of what their status is in the courtroom. Also in terms of POC women in general, gender, race, everything is just, it's taken out of proportion, and it shouldn't be really in a courtroom. Your gender, your race, factors like that shouldn't be what impact your experience in court. So having something like this restorative justice program can help us with that and give people the equality they need and deserve.
These meetings where offenders and victims get to meet each other, I feel like that time when they meet each other, I think it's like a very important part of the whole process, because if they don't get to meet together, I don't think there'll be any form of closure like Foti mentioned. So I feel like it's also one of the key elements to the whole restorative justice aspect.
In these 2 years, I never stopped learning about restorative justice. I attended different meetings and workshops, and I really got to understand what restorative justice actually is, what it does, how it can be implemented, and why it benefits society. It was actually a very special project to me, because it was my first volunteering project, the one that made me further volunteer for other projects and bring a contribution to improving my society and myself.
Shumë projekte dhe aktivitetet të tilla në të ardhmen për të drejtat e fëmijëve në Shqipëri, ku të merrnin pjesë sa më shumë nga moshatarët tanë.
I think this is one of the most fascinating thing I've done, and to be honest, I did not, because first of all, when I joined, I did not expect to be actually, expressing myself that well, and I think CAB is the one way which actually gave me a chance to get out of my comfort zone and express my opinion about the world, and I think it's a great way, and we're working more on that, and hopefully somewhere in the future we will express our opinion and everyone can hear our opinion.
Maybe at the UN.
Hopefully.
So thank you very much, everyone. This is the message we would like to leave you with today. So thank you again for your presence here. Thank you for your contributions. We're very happy to have you following our work in iRestore throughout these 2 years. So thank you for your support, and stay tuned for the next news. Take a look at our e-learning course. There will soon be translated versions of it in Albanian, Greek, and Romanian. So don't hesitate to take a look at it, and also in the other materials we produced so far. And connect with us in social media. You'll see the visual translations that were done today by Maria Fouquier from Visuality. And well, we stay in touch. Thank you very much for your support. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.